Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If I could just ask you to take your seats. And my name's Steve Wayne. I'm the chair of the Derbyshire Dales District Council, and as such I'll be controlling, hopefully, this evening's events. To my right is Councilor Dawn Gretrix, who is the Vice Chair, and then we've got Paul Wilson, who's the Chief Executive, our Civic Chair, David Burton, and on the end we've got the Vice Chair, Peter Slack. To my left we've got Jason Spencer, who is hopefully going to keep me in control tonight, and Tommy Shaw on the far side here, who will be taking the actual minutes, etc. So all I need to do is just to let you know that we have no fire drill planned tonight. There is, if there is one, it will be an actual real event. So I'd ask you to go out through that door and then comply with the fire exits. And the actual place where we're going to meet is actually out on Edgefold Road car park. For those people that don't know, it's down the side of the building and over on the far side. So if we could comply with that, if we do, but we've no planned events tonight of any fire drill. The other thing that I need to make you aware of is that this meeting is being videoed and it's going live on YouTube. So if any people don't want their identity to be known, they need to be letting Tommy know here that they would rather not. So what I want to do is just open the meeting up with a bit of sad news, really. Well, it's very sad news. Earlier this month, Councilor Tony Morley passed away. Councillor Morley had represented the Norbury ward on the District Council since 2015 and served as the Civic Chairman from 2019 to 20. He was also a board member of the Derbyshire Dales Council for Voluntary Services. Our thoughts are with Councillor Morley's wife, widow Michelle, and with his family and many friends. I'll just ask you to join me in a minute's reflection, standing if you wish, preferably, after which we will hear from the Civic Chair and political leaders. Thank you. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Thank you very much for your thoughts. And I'll now call upon Councillor David Burton, the Civic Chair, to say a few words on that, on Councillor Morley's passing. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you for allowing me this opportunity, particularly in my civic capacity, to express our sadness to Councillor Morley's wife, Michelle. Councillor Morley was in fact Civic Chair of this authority in 2019. During that year, I sadly lost my mother, and Councillor Morley attended that service, and what impressed me was that he didn't rush off afterwards. He came to the reception and we had quite a long conversation, and that has always stuck with me about Tony, that people did matter to him. For myself, I had a break of 8 years not being on the council, so very often my contact with Tony was when I was sat with the public, and I always felt he was a councillor that listened, he wanted the best for people, and he came across to me as being a decent person. So I simply want to say, God bless you, Tony, and may your life be cherished by all those he loved and those he served. As a boy, there was a particular wayside pulpit on our chapel notice board that said, "To live in the hearts of those we love is not to die." God bless you, Tony.
Thank you, Councillor Burton, for those lovely words. Councillor Hobson, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Tony Morley was a very special man. Intelligent, articulate, an outstanding councillor and voice for his community. Tony had had an extremely interesting life, as anyone who read the Derbyshire Dales Tribute would have seen recently. Politically active, he brought a wealth of experience to the Derbyshire Dales. I will remember Tony fondly, a wise counsel and always putting his community first. My most abiding thought, he was a gentleman, absolutely straight and fair in everything he did. I will miss him.
Thank you very much. Councillor Buttle, would you like to say some brief words, please? Thank you.
I had no plan to speak, but I will miss him, and I've found him. I always felt that he'd got an eyebrow raised at me, and it always made me think a little bit about what it was I'd been up to. So, yeah, I'll miss him. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Tony, I used to sit on when we used to go on the planning site visits, we used to sit close together on the bus and we used to talk, and he used to tell me about all his work he used to do in schools. He used to go around special schools with his expertise in helping children with what the problems were. And he was very, very interested in his work, and he was very conscientious in what he was doing. It was all, Tony, every event, most events, Tony was always there. He was a very, very good attender at meetings and events. And Tony was genuine a nice man, really. A really nice man. So, God bless you, Tony. And the Lord be with you. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Slack. Councillor Flitter, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I thought it's only right to give way from speaking first tonight because the Conservative group leader would want to put her views on a very sad occasion. When we talk about Tony, I remember the first meeting that I saw him here, and it didn't go down well because he challenged me on something that I said about economic development and being an area of low pay and high house prices. And he shot back with a response. And I thought, well, at least he's thinking about the situation. And after that, we got together and we did have a chat about how different the Derbyshire Dales was to Blackpool. And from that day on, we sort of got on, but we didn't converse on a regular basis. And that's sad because I'm willing to speak to most people, but he was a very quiet man, and he was a gentleman, I quite agree. We shall miss him, and my heart goes out to Mrs. Morley and his family because it is a sad loss, and he did make a valid contribution to this council. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the councillors that have made representation and pay tribute to Councillor Morley. We'll now go on with the agenda and we move on to apologies. Tommy, can you provide any apologies, please?
I'll do it, Chair, because I've
Jason,
got a mic. We've received no apologies, Chair.
That's great, thank you. And now we move on to public participation. I've managed to get to most of the people at the back, and the consensus was that you'll each have 3 minutes to put your case forward and comment on whatever report. We've got 9 people who wish to speak on the Gypsy and Traveller site provision in the district, and 1 person who wishes to speak on the motion B in relation to the public toilets. So I will just let you know at 2.5 minutes that you've got 30 seconds left, and I would oblige it if you wouldn't mind keeping to the 3 minutes, because we have a lot of business to get through. Thank you. I will start with Claire Gamble, a local resident, to speak on the motion in relation to the toilets. Thank you.
Right, so when do I start with 3? Now. Thank you. Right. At the time of the closure of the Monsal Head, the toilets were the most heavily used rural toilet owned by the council. They also have disabled toilet provision that allows people with disabilities to enjoy the iconic viewpoint of the Peak District. But in 2018, Baslow and Hartington were prioritised over Monsal Head in what was obviously a political decision. The year the toilet closed, income dropped at Monsal Head car park. The year they reopened, it earned nearly 24,000 more than the year before. Even if 2/3 of that was down to the COVID bounce, the extra third, with a 20p charge on the car park, should raise about £14,000 a year, more than enough to run the toilets. People park longer at a car park that has toilets. The toilet's not expensive to run at about £7,300 a year, but at the moment they rely totally on voluntary donations. And despite our best efforts with 3 donation boxes and a Just Giving page, donations have never equalled expenses. This year has been particularly poor, possibly the weather and probably the cost of living crisis. This amount is peanuts to the council. We've eked out grants that were given to us at the start of the CIC, as well as Mark and I each putting £1,000 of our own money in, but this money is now gone. I had started to complete a funding application before I read the agenda and found out about Councillor G's motion. That is now on hold, awaiting the outcome of this motion. Political posturing has real-time consequence for the CIC. I realise this motion also conflicts with your review of the public conveniences and that you will be annoyed by the opposition's motion designed to embarrass you. If this leads to the toilet staying in the review process, I would ask that you put priority on Monsal Head. Because they are run by a CIC that is struggling to make ends meet, they were never likely to be taken on by a parish council because they're not in the centre of a village. And as such, they are particularly vulnerable to closure. Also, please keep me in the loop. The CIC needs to plan finances to keep them running. Also, while you go through your review, you need to think about who is going to order supplies, pay the cleaner weekly, pay the bills, take meter readings, keep the accounts, submit the accounts to the accountant, sort out bank mandates, direct debits, the sanitary bill and utility contracts, company's house returns, the Just Giving page. These are the good jobs I currently do. How long do you expect me to keep doing these jobs while you make your mind up and this council treats the CIC that I give up valuable time to help run as a political football? It's a shame me and Mark started the CIC with no politics, and that's how it was run until now. Councillor G put in this motion without consulting any of his fellow directors of the CIC, and in a phone call yesterday it was quite clear he takes a flippant role in the CIC. If the CIC were to become bankrupt, sorry, can I? It is really
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off. I think you've got your point very well over. Thank you. Mr. Hewitt, would you like to take the 3 minutes? Thank you. This is John Hewitt, Community Renewals Planner, to speak on behalf of the owners of the Woodyard at Holmesford. Just let me know when you're settled, Mr. Hewitt.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Hello all. Good to see an excellent turnout. The owners of the Woodyard and others have complaints, but this is not the time or place to consider them. We note the study group's most recent comments, but they don't go quite far enough. The situation, as they say, is indeed urgent, but the solution isn't, as they put it, potential. The Woodyard is actual. It has been the subject of democratic consultation twice, in 2013 and this year. The solution is actual. The owners' lives have been on hold for 15 years. They do not want to wait for more, in our view, unnecessary additional consultation, delay and uncertainty. yard is totally unique. It has a willing seller. It complies with the council's own recent call for sites and action. It was approved for up to 8 permanent pitches by a near unanimous vote earlier this month. As I understand it, this council meeting has the discretion to implement the approved site without any further delay. We suggest as follows. Firstly, tomorrow on the 29th of September, commission your land agent to seek to agree with the owner's land agent an open market valuation of the land for 8 permanent pitches. If agreed by the owners, buy it. Buy it. Otherwise, it could well be sold privately. Secondly, ask Dr. Spencer to identify the current families most in need who wish to relocate to the woodyard as soon as possible to avoid an humanitarian disaster this winter. And thirdly, work on development of the site. I know your Director of Housing would love to do that, and implement it as fast as possible without more unnecessary delays. Thank you, Chairman.
That's 2.5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess an award due after that.
Mr. Richard Walsh, who's a local resident, to comment on the Travellers' report. Thank you. So let us know when you're ready. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we all recognise that there is a legal duty to provide a Gypsy and Traveller site. However, any business, councils included, operate on the basis of supply and demand. So the question is there a demand for Gypsy and Traveller sites in the Derbyshire Dales? Where are the hordes of gypsies and travellers asking for sites? Are they camping everywhere in the Dales? I think not. If you look at the local press, you will see that many encampments occur in Derby City. That's where the gypsies and travellers want to be, near services, near where they can carry out their work opportunities. It seems to me that the Regressive Alliance is actually hell-bent on filling every nook and cranny in the Derbyshire Dales with gypsy and traveller sites. We hear of a frenetic search for sites, including appointing a land agent. There's a list of sites supposedly to be brought back for consideration by this council, rescinding a previous decision. Now the sites are not included in the motion in tonight's agenda. Out they go. However, the search still goes on for new sites. In they come. I really must congratulate the ruling Alliance group on this council for the invention of a new dance, which is called the Traveller Site Hokey Cokey. Sites are in, sites are out, in they come, out they go, shuffle them all about. Never seen anything like it. The 3 members, Alliance members of the Gypsy and Travelling Working Group said that there's an urgent need to focus on investigating permanent sites. I don't think so, and some other people in the Dales may well agree with me. Yes, there is an urgent need. There's an urgent need for affordable homes so that young people can stay in the Derbyshire Dales. There's a need for quality, sustainable employment opportunities in the Derbyshire Dales. There isn't a need for the council to be spending £75,000 or thereabouts a year on gypsy and traveller provision. So, if the Alliance is truly progressive, then get a grip, get your priorities right, do the right thing, and the right thing is affordable homes and quality jobs, not gypsy and traveller sites. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Next up is Denise Brown, a local resident, again to comment on the report. Thank you. Just let me know when you're comfy.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. I object to the consideration of Ashbourne Car Parks, Fish Pond Meadow overspill car park being considered for temporary traveller sites. The suggestion to rescind the minute would appear to me to be political chess. The sites were deemed unsuitable, and a change of political power does not make the sites any safer or more appropriate. It is clear that the best interest of the travellers is secondary consideration to the current political majority. This is wrong. Consideration should also be shown to the residents of Ashbourne who suffered in the summer of 2022. Travellers were placed on Clifton Road car park. This impacted on residents who had their lives disrupted day and night. People who worked shifts had their lives turned upside down. During the days they were shouting, dogs barking, and at night the noise of generators made it impossible to have any quality of life or get the amount of sleep needed for them to continue to work. The same environment will apply to any site where there are residents living. Citing travellers in the middle of residential areas is not acceptable. Firstly, the law-abiding, tax-paying residents are resentful for being launched into the middle of traveller life. And secondly, the travellers will have no privacy to conduct their own way of life and their own style. Businesses must also be considered. Many struggled to keep afloat through COVID, and then in the summer of 2022, they found the footfall and income was greatly reduced because no one wanted to venture into town when the travellers were there. We've had the Levelling Up Fund of nearly 15 million awarded to Ashbourne. It will be managed by the District Council, and it was not intended to subsidise a nice area for travellers to live. I request the committee, working parties and officers take note of their own terminology, tolerated traveller site. Ashbourne does not have anywhere that will be tolerated by residents or that is suitable for travellers, as the findings in the new November Working Party 2022 stated. The district have a duty under the Traveller Act to make provision for sites, but if there aren't any, the authority can't reasonably be expected to cite travellers anywhere just to tick a box. There is also the cost concern for repeatedly cleaning up the sites after travellers leave. The loss of revenue on the car parks, which in the end will be footed by Ashbourne residents. It just isn't fair. As for Fish Pond Meadow and the overspill car park, I didn't know at this stage they'd been withdrawn. One's a floodplain, and the District Council have kept the overspill car park closed for years, stating it isn't safe for vehicles to park on because of waterlogging. I repeat, the sites deemed unsuitable under the last political majority have not been improved or made more suitable by change of politics. Ashbourne has no suitable sites for tolerated traveller sites.
Thank you. Mr. Stephen Walton, local resident, to comment on the report. Thank you. Okay.
Good evening. The starting point of this exercise is simple, really. Ask the families where they want to be located and then locate the site there. Nowhere else, or is that too hard? It is on record from the meeting held on the 23rd of March this year that your own planning officers asked the families this very question and were told they wished to be in Ashbourne and that they would not occupy a site at the Woodyard at Holmesford as it is not suitable for their needs. The site which has been the constant default bleat of all the NIMBYs amongst you. So you should keep that in your minds. The Woodyard, by the way, is never likely to be developed as the costings will be astronomical, and that's before they find out what condition the landfill is in. Also realise that the footprint is far too small, which in itself was totally disregarded when it was approved for 8 pitches. I wish you good luck in matching the Woodyard to those sites portrayed in the Places We're Proud Of brochure. On the subject of the Woodyard, when will the full due diligence report on the landowner be available for public scrutiny? Because you wouldn't want another Hasker Farm debacle, would you? He was last seen on television chained to a Christmas tree in Trafalgar Square denouncing the Norwegian government. Anyway, it was also made clear in the same meeting on March 23rd that there is an ideal site in Ashbourne, namely the depot. The proposal to include the depot in the next stage of the investigation was made by Councillor David Hughes and seconded by Councillor Martin Burfoot. Given that the Liberal Democrat group was strongly in favour of the depot as the preferred option, why, now that they are part of the Progressive Alliance, have they come out in favour of Holmesford? The depot had already met the necessary criteria of the search and has the added bonus of already being in the DDDC's ownership and surplus to requirements, standing empty. What more could you want? It's free, ready, and in the right place. So there is no reason whatsoever for this exercise to be a black hole for money to be poured into, money you can ill afford to squander. Now, this nettle has to be grasped, local sensitivities overruled, and politics put aside to settle this problem once and for all. If not, you'll be stuck with a very expensive white elephant in the middle of nowhere, a monument of folly for all the DDDC ratepayers to visit in their times of despair.
30 seconds.
You may also be able to harvest enough moving air to power a wind turbine to recoup some losses from the thousands of shaking heads. It is now over to you to do the right thing, but as we all know, doing the right thing is the furthest of what happens in politics, so I won't hold my breath. I would also like to encourage the press and media present tonight to urge their readership to view the broadcast of this meeting to raise a maximum awareness. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Siobhan Spencer, Derby Gypsy Liaison Group, to speak about the report.
Thanks for letting me speak tonight. I went from Groundhog Day to total aspiration with this document, to be honest. Recommendations from 1 to 7, I would say no, and number 8 isn't quite legal. Licence agreements, no, it has to be a legal tenancy as amended by the Mobile Homes Act, so that one needs to be looked at. I'll start with the woodyard. The woodyard does not require a 6-week consultation on it. It's been passed. We need now implementation, not consultation. And I'm sure the MP Sarah Dines, who's here tonight, will agree with this. I have spoken to her. And you certainly cannot run the consultation as it stands. If you'd invited us to look at it, we would have pointed out that on question 1, the planning definition has now been found to be discriminatory due to the Lisa Smith case, 2022. The final Gypsy status case. I did the witness statement for it in relation to the inequality of women, elderly and disabled Gypsy people who can't actively search for work and keep moving. Government has chosen not to appeal. Whether consultees agree with it or not, the pictures arising from the GTTA, the Gypsy and Traveller Needs Assessment, is a local government official report. You have to abide by the pitch numbers in it and find them. Therefore, the question 1 is totally irrelevant. The site has been passed without the requirement of flood risk assessment or any other assessment for that matter. I know that the Environment Agency was corrected, so there should not be a cost there. What concerns us is that nowhere in this budget is the 10% deposit for this land. As you know, we've been the ones that have found sites, and it has been problematic for many years. What makes you all think you're going to find it in the future? And you lose this one 60 years in the making. You can get a memorandum of understanding between the landowners and yourselves within a week. As I understand it, a buyer puts in a deposit subject to the works. You cannot expect the landowners just to wait. It's not for me to go into negotiation for landowners. That's not my concern. My concern is that the land will get sold to Gypsy or Traveller people from outside of the Derbyshire Dales, and then the social care site is totally lost. Having this site is a bonus. Anyone who is not camped on a legal-based site, whether it's a pitch and they're offered one and they don't take it up, then you can wash your hands and dispel your homeless duty. You can compel people to go there.
30 seconds.
If a site plan is drawn up as quickly as possible with facility blocks, wood-clad wood blend, that would be better use of funds, and you have something concrete to show the family. The money on this report would be better spent as a deposit to hold this land. Otherwise, you're going to lose again. You're going to lose out on money you put on one side, getting site plans drawn up, and then they're going to be lost if somebody else buys it. Temporary sites. I was disappointed to see that the Fish Pond Meadows and Rosalie removed from the list with no transparent discussion as the temporary sites in the south and north.
That's 3 minutes, thank you.
Discussion should be open.
Excuse
What are
me.
these discussions?
Excuse me, please.
Who had the discussions and when?
Thank you very much.
Talking about transparency. Thank you. Not fairness in time.
Right, I'd like to get Victoria Friend, Chair of Rosalie Parish Council, to comment on the report. I understand you wish to tender a petition as well.
Yes, I have a petition here. I'm not sure who I'm supposed to give it to.
Yes. Somebody will come and collect the petition from you, but you are entitled to 3 minutes to speak. And in relation to the petition, you'll get formal confirmation within 5 days of its receipt, but it's on the video that you've given it anyway. But thank you. Are you okay to start?
I am. When the report for agenda item 10 was published last Wednesday, it contained proposals to formally rescind the decision made last November to rule out all council-owned land as potential traveller sites other than Matlock Bath Station and Matlock Station car parks, as well as to undertake a consultation to designate Old Station Close car park in Roseley as a temporary traveller site. Yesterday morning, a press release was issued saying the Council's working group had listened to public concerns and, in response, has postponed consideration of these two recommendations. The first time that the Roseley site was considered for travellers was in 2012. We had a public meeting on the 7th of November, attended by Sandra Lamb, Paul Wilson, and the best part of 100 local residents, all of whom had very strong feelings on the subject. Paul Wilson told the Assembly that Roseley would be a temporary site for about 6 months until a permanent site in Ashbourne could be arranged. That was 13 years ago, and we are still no closer to a permanent site and have no official designated temporary sites. Since 2012, the travellers have been sent to this Roseley site twice. At no time have they ever gone to Old Station Close of their own accord, but both times they were put on the site by the Council, they certainly left of their own accord. The site is the same now as it was in 2012. The objections to the site being used for travellers are the same now as in 2012. The previous working group had 10 to 12 members on it, many of whom were well versed in the history of the issue. Since the election, this new council has established a working group of 4, 2 of whom are brand new councillors with no first-hand knowledge of the issue. This is why the debacle of the last 2 days has happened. Let me remind you why the site at Roseley is unsuitable for travellers. This is the only car park in the village and it is extremely well used. I went down there yesterday morning at 11 o'clock. There were 34 cars in the car park. The car park is vital for the 6 local businesses on the Old Station Close estate. Do you actually want these businesses to close down? The Level Centre for Handicapped People, also on the close, cannot operate without parking nearby. These are disabled people. It's obvious. The village hall needs to hold events in order to survive. They require parking, so our only car park is essential. This car park is currently the end of the cycle trail. People park there to use their bicycles. Walkers park there to walk the famous 55-mile Derwent Valley Heritage Way, which runs beside the car park. It is well documented that the travellers hate the site. The site is surrounded by extremely tall trees, which block all sunlight in winter, so it is cold and damp. There's a steep drop down to the river all along one side of the site. No fencing was ever provided to make it safe. The cycle trail is due to link up to the Monsal Trail and will eventually go through the middle of the site. Roseley is a small village and the impact of sighting travellers there would be unfairly disproportionate. That's 11 reasons. Don't put travellers on Old Station Close in Roseley. It makes no sense for anyone. Stop going around in circles, reversing decisions that were made for good reason. This is not a political issue. It's a legal obligation for the council as a whole. We need to trust our council no matter what party is in charge. Come together, fulfil your obligations to the travellers, but don't forget your obligations to the local communities which you serve.
3 minutes, thank you. Mr. Richard Bean, a local resident, a business owner, to comment on the report. Just let me know when you're ready, Mr. Bean. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I live on Old Station Close and with my wife and son, and I run my business from the same address. We employ about 7 people at that site. I have to tell you that obviously I'm the only one really who's got first-hand experience really of what it's like to live with these people on a daily basis. It was actually an absolute living hell. From morning till night, we'd have shouting and screaming and loud music. We had large fires, cutting trees down all around the site generally, burning all that and all sorts of rubbish. And any visitors that we had to our business were verbally abused and told that they were now in control of the site and not to come again. So loads of people just didn't come back. It's also got to be remembered that the site, now that the cycle trail's up and running, it has to be said it's been quite a success. and thousands of people come to the site every year, and hikers, walkers alike. Lots and lots of people visit the site. As Vicky said earlier, it's an extremely busy site. You can't get any cars in there hardly. None of our staff could get a parking space. They were told not to come. They were frightened to leave the cars there. They dreaded coming to work. It was an absolute living hell. Often they'd come into work with human muck on the shoes. It was just horrific. You cannot begin to imagine how bad it was. So I think it's been covered pretty well, everything else, but I tried to bring an issue up at the last meeting at Wirksworth and was shut down. All I wanted to do was point out potentially a very dangerous situation with one certain individual there, and I was shut down. I took legal advice on it after and told that I shouldn't have been shut down. I didn't mention anybody by name, merely trying to point out a potentially very dangerous situation.
30 seconds left.
And of course, had I been allowed to speak, then the appropriate action could have been taken, and that terrible incident that occurred at Ashbourne last year would never have and should never have happened. All I will say that finally is I would ask councillors to vote on this matter not politically but morally, please. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much. Next person is Mr. George Ashbrook, Managing Director of Ashbrook Roofing, to comment on the report. Thank you.
Hello, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. So I'm George Ashbrook. I am representing the Ashbrook family and the Ashbrook Group. Our businesses are located at Harrison Way and at Station Yard. We employ just under 50 people, and I think tonight I'd like to express my thoughts and concerns regarding the unsuitability of the proposed site at both Station Yard and Harrison Way. My concerns: business is difficult. It's difficult through COVID. It's been difficult through inflation, and I think when it was first proposed at Harrison Way and at Station Yard, it's very concerning to myself and other business owners. I think we owe a duty to businesses in and around the area to keep them stable as they employ people are in the local area. I think other concerns that have been brought up are parking for residents, for businesses, and the parking for the level centre. As part of their planning, they were promised to have the car park as an overspill, as they've got 2 disabled parking bays and 1 normal parking space, and that's it. I also want to bring up the hazards. It is an industrial estate. We have many lorries, vans, forklifts in and around the area, and it can be quite dangerous. Also, there's vulnerability in terms of the bank and the river, the local road, the main A6 that goes past. I've had concerns from staff as the nights are drawing in and they're parking their cars going back to their vehicles at night. They feel that it may be unsafe and they're quite nervous about this. The cycle track, it would be a shame to off-put anybody for the cycle track and the walkers, and general hygiene for the local businesses and residents. We had a very similar scenario 6 to 8 months ago at Harrison Way, and I was very concerned at that point about the lack of process. It felt very underhand, and I think the council owe a duty of care to residents and business in the area.
30 seconds.
I think I would like the council to ensure whatever happens next that it would go through its proper process and not be underhanded. My last point was previously Station Yard has been abandoned due to its unsuitability, and I would like the council to look at a permanent site for the travellers rather than moving them temporarily around the county to ensure this saves money and distress of the travellers and the local residents and businesses. We owe the travellers a duty of care, and I don't...
3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Councillor Caroline Cooper from the Parkside Ward at Ashbourne to comment on the report. Thank you. Just let me know when are you okay now? Yes, I'm fine. You want your light on then? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, members of the Council. I'm Caroline Cooper and I'm representing the members of Parkside Ward who have asked me to speak on their behalf. Having represented this ward for some 20 years, I feel yet again Ashbourne has to defend itself regarding the travellers' families. This family has caused the District Council and the taxpayers thousands of pounds having to apply to get them removed, plus clean-up costs. I've lost count of the times they have trespassed on the Fishpond Meadow overspill car park. It is totally inappropriate site in a town that has just won Levelling Up Fund to build itself to a higher standard. Twice they have trespassed on the grammar school site. This again has had to be cleaned up. The car park on Clifton Road, the site of their last invasion of the town, has seen the son display himself to children, and the police did nothing when it was reported to them. They have invaded the leisure centre car park again on more than one occasion. Excrement has been tossed into the river. Yes, we know they need somewhere to go, but to suggest that Ashbourne is not that place. Their presence in the town causes havoc. They are not welcome in the shops. I have been told by shopkeepers on more than one occasion about shoplifting whilst they've been in the town. Years ago, they were offered a home and they turned it down. The son, who is very autistic, needs proper care. He is, I would suggest, beyond the parents' care and needs special attention. I would respectfully suggest that the councillor who wishes to rescind the minute, and I believe represents Matlock Ward, is of persuasion of not in my backyard. Yet, well, let me say, Ashbourne has had more than its fair share. It is no longer appropriate for us to take them. Our car parks are full to overflowing. We are losing our green spaces to house building. We spent hundreds of man-hours working to improve the town with the Levelling Up Fund to decide in 10 minutes that Ashbourne can yet again become the dumping ground for the Derbyshire Dales District Council to put their unwanted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was the last speaker. But I would just like to add that there was a significant amount of correspondence. Over 100 emails have been received. And also, I need to assure people that those have been circulated to other members because they've been coming through on a daily basis. And I've been reading them anyway. So thank you to those who've taken the time to come. And now we'll move on to interests. Are there any interests that members wish to disclose? Councillor G? Thank you. Councillor Wakeman, the same. Councillor Boothroyd? The same. Any other interests? No? Thank you. I'll now move on to item number 4, the leader's announcements, and call on Councillor Flitter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to be too long tonight because we've got a difficult meeting ahead of us. So I'll be as short as I can. After a relatively quiet August in relation to meetings, that is, September has brought a flourish of information from the DCN and DLUC and other ministerial information that just seems to be rolling in. But what I thought most relevant topic tonight would be what's happening this week with Vision Derbyshire, the new mayoral arrangements, and how in the Dales are approaching this. As you know, we only have 2 district authorities that will join 2 district authorities in Nottinghamshire, leaving the rest of us on the sidelines. I've repeatedly stated that the selection of those representatives should allow a fair reflection on demographics and not based on politics or size of authority alone. But alas, politics has been a factor, and this morning I did support this because I felt the right people were going in the right places, and I can let you know that Chesterfield and High Peak will be those authorities going on the new mayoral situation, leaving the rest of us on the strategic leadership board to fight our corner. Taking those positions, however, what I did achieve at the meeting on Tuesday that I had with the Derbyshire leaders is more and open conversations and regular meetings with all Derbyshire leaders. And that was endorsed this morning, and I'm looking forward to that, because regardless of politics, we've got to move forward. A couple of weeks ago, at the Derbyshire leaders and chief execs meet, they met at County Hall and met Mark Rogers, the CEO of the interim shadow board. And he's got a team of 7 people. And these cover the operational matters, communications, finance, investment, strategy and delivery, transport and governance. Their task is to prepare for change. We've heard about creating a single economic plan involving all counties, cities, boroughs and district councils, hopefully to bring more money into the area. And the need to review existing work and contribute new ideas, but being careful not to just replace work undertaken to date. And the key principles behind the new organisations are going to be accountability, inclusivity, subsidiarity, choice, governance, scrutiny and audit. Many questions followed that debate, but the very poignant point that was raised was about the incoming mayor. And what if he or she disagreed with the shape, size and competition of the arrangements that were being made? And that has to be tested. Whether you agree or not, the new mayoral elections, soon it will be the only game in town. The level of influence is paramount, but we are in a position where we literally have to fight for the crumbs left on the table. But to do that, we've got to be well informed and ready to act. And that's what partnership will enable us to do. With that in mind, I am ready to interact with the new Derbyshire Strategic Leadership Board and all Derbyshire leaders, hopefully setting work streams for economic growth, employment, skills, health and communities, public service reform, transport, climate change, planning and housing. The D2 economic development we heard about this morning is worth £23.4 million in Derbyshire, and it's performing well. They did give us a lot of stats this morning, a lot of stats, but I'm sceptical because I fear on how those stats were provided, and you can interpret them any different ways. But what I did notice, a very important statistic, Paul and myself on Tuesday evening spoke to the Health Authority, and what came out we were most concerned about was health care and care in the home when people are leaving hospital. And some people need 4 carers a day, which they just can't get at the moment. And the Health Authority are trying to release beds as soon as possible. But the point in today, there were 5,840 job vacancies in home care, which is shocking really. And then circling squares. On Monday night, I thought it was very important for members that had that presentation of the work that was undertaken in September 22 and carried on till February 23 with a report in March. And I hope members recognise that the whole discussion of resilience and resources of this council was timely because of Paul Wilson's report that is coming later tonight. We may not agree with everything that was in that presentation on Monday night, but now we have a basis for those discussions, and we will give our officers the resources to develop ideas and take this council forward in a positive manner. I thank those who attended the meeting on Tuesday with the Peak National Park Authority. I found it informative and useful, and though they reflect on the fact that their starting point and legislation is different from that from the Derbyshire Dales, I'm hopeful that we can develop an officer-member working group to examine opportunities for a joint approach. And there we continue the theme of partnership. Future partnership working is so important, especially with the challenges that lie ahead. And that is one reason I'm just picking up my notes here, because I do need to tell you that the November council meeting may be delayed, and we've got to have words yet of a different date, but the timetable for the D2 discussions mean that there won't be time for officers to write a report. So we're trying to work that through. Finally, this may cause a laugh, Flit, Flop, Flitter and the Coalition of Chaos. I had 2 words for that. They weren't offensive, but there's 2 words. But I am a gentleman and I am a grown-up, and I shall act like one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for coming, Mr. Bean and Mrs. Bean. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Flitter. We'll now move on to our Civic Chair, Councillor David Burton, for his announcements. Thank you.
Back in July, when we had the last full council meeting, I was admitted into hospital, came out, and then I went back in again, and the end result was a pacemaker. So I'm really pleased to be with you back tonight. But thank you for your good wishes, and to some members for the cards. Also tonight, can I thank members? A couple of people have given me kind donations towards my civic charity. I've got a couple of spare reports if they got lost, but at the July meeting, everyone should have received something about the Send a Child to Hucklow Fund. Set in the heart of Councillor Chapman's ward is the Nightingale Centre, the National Unitarian Holiday Centre that provides children from disadvantaged backgrounds holidays. It's something I've been closely associated with, and certainly I find it very emotional. I helped with the Mansfield Week this year, and when those children arrive, it's probably the first occasion that they've ever, and it really does sound hard to believe, but they're coming from backgrounds where it's their first opportunity to have a holiday in the countryside. So I do commend that charity for consideration, please, members. Also, a big thank you to Peter Slack, because Peter has kindly done quite a lot of my duties because physically I've just not been well enough to do them. So I do thank you, Peter. Well done to the people of Wensley. They're raising £30,000 to restore the roof of the Wensley reading room. I went and opened a craft fair there. But the nice thing about this role, I'm sure Peter will agree with me, is it brings you to the centre of real community. And lots of decent people there concerned about that building and it being a continuing resource for the village in Wensley. My thanks to Councillor Stuart Lees and to the Mayor of Ashbourne, who made me extremely welcome when I went to, it almost seemed to me to be quite an eccentric event, the opening of the new bandstand. And we got as far as the interval and the heavens opened and just about everybody then disappeared. But the band continued, and Ashbourne Town Band really are superb. And it was lovely to see so many young people part of that. Just finally, two other things. I had the honour of switching on the lights with my wife Ruth for the 125th Venetian illuminations at Matlock Bath. And what really touched me that night was, as I looked around at all those decent families, it was absolutely magical for the children. The happiness and the delight is hard to put into words, but that is a superb event, and long may it continue. And yesterday, I was able to cut a ribbon for the opening of the fully renovated tennis courts on the Hall-Lees Park at Matlock. That has cost £46,000 to achieve. It has been managed by the Lawn Tennis Association, funded by the UK government, and we were pleased to have the presence of the MP present at that event, and the Lawn Tennis Association Foundation. That's going to be a tremendous good resource for people in Matlock and the environs, and my thanks also to our own officers, because they did a wonderful job of putting the whole thing together yesterday down on the park. So that's it, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. We now move on to item 6, which is the committees, and we're asked to receive the non-exempt minutes from the committees shown below. They are the Local Plan Subcommittee of the 3rd of July, the Community and Environment Committee of the 13th of July, the Biodiversity Subcommittee of the 19th of July, the Governance and Resource Committee of the 20th of July, Full Council on the 27th of July, the Community and Environment Committee on the 7th of September, and the Planning Committee of the 12th of September. I would hope that you've all had an opportunity. Can I ask if anybody wishes to move these? Councillor Burford, and seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Can we vote? All those in favour, please. And against? Any abstentions? That's carried then. Unanimous, thank you. Right, now we come on to questions, and we have under Rule Procedure 15, that's the questions from members of the council, and we have 3 questions from Councillor Lees. You wish to put those questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, all the results around platform housing, basically. My questions are, number 1, why don't councillors get a faster response to our residents' issues from platform? As the system is at the moment, councillors have to wait just the same as our residents to get through on a call, which is why we as councillors are contacted in the first instance to get a timely response. Is it time a review is had regarding platform due to the amount of time our residents have to wait for the work to be carried out on their properties? Second question, is it time that the housing repairs are brought back in-house? Following a recent incident in Ashbourne, in a platform housing area, why are our elderly residents not being visited by platform officers as they was told there was going to be, as per the tenancy policy, which they have? Question 3, if councillors use the email system as advised, can the same day response be had? Thank you.
Thank you. They'll be responded to by Councillor Flitter.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart, for your questions. You've got a response which is a basic response on fact, but I want a personal response to this because you're not alone. I think every councillor around this room is upset and distraught about how they deal with local residents in sheltered housing. and in social housing. And to that effect, next week I have a meeting with, I think it's Elizabeth, who is the Chief Exec of Platform Housing, who's bringing one of her advisors. So this paper that you've bought with the questions on, and if any member in this room has a problem with platform housing, please let me know this week, because I will be discussing this with her next week, and I am very upset about people in Matlock and how they're treated and the condition of housing. So there's a wide scope of questions to be asked. I need your help to gather the information. Our meeting is tabled, so I will be putting these points across. Thank you.
You wish to come back, Councillor Lees?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Flitter. Much appreciated that. I think it's much needed. And I would just like to say, even the 5-day response to emails for our residents isn't good enough. For somebody elderly that's either got no heating, water, we want a same-day response at least. Even if work doesn't get done that day, we do need a response ASAP. And I'd just like to say thanks to Rob Coggins, the Director of Housing, for all his help that he's personally given myself, and I'm sure other councillors, in sorting issues out with platform that obviously we can't no longer do. We have to go through the email system. So thank you very much to Rob Coggins. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for raising those questions. They were the only questions, but we do have some urgent questions. These are under Rule 15 and urgent questions. Councillor Hobson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yesterday morning, I saw a press release from Derbyshire Dales District Council that said that the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group had listened to public concerns expressed this week and in response had postponed 2 of the 10 recommendations. I am a member of that group and I was not aware of any meeting of the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group to discuss this matter. Does the leader of the council accept, therefore, that the above statement is incorrect and alter that press release? And will he confirm who made the decision to postpone? Thank you.
Do you want to take them one by one? Do you want to answer that one, Councillor Flitter?
If you want them one by one, yes, Chair, I'm quite amenable to that. I think this, Councillor Hobson, is a matter of reading the headlines and not the story, which is the fault of many people. And I think we're playing on words here. Perhaps it should have been used like, you know, the alliance members of, or the majority of members. But it's clear in the statement that followed that it was the statement from the 3 Progressive Alliance members of that working group. So whichever way you approach it, that is approach is factual. When you spoke about a formal meeting that you weren't aware of, and it saddens me because when the Conservatives put the nomination in for one member to be on the travelling group, I was delighted that you was taking the place, because we'd worked together on the previous administration's attempts to solve this problem. But I say it saddens me because there are no reports that, apart from that you've been very negative and there's some abusive emails, and you've not really acted in accordance with the group to get a positive result here. Perhaps, I don't know that, but perhaps that is part of the reason. And I hope that in future, if you are to remain on that group, you will play a full and active role.
Thank you, Chair. I have a supplementary question. I'm going to make a comment first of all. If anybody would like to see any of my emails that I've ever sent in relation to the Gypsy and Traveller Group or anything else, I can assure you I have never sent an abusive email in my life. My supplementary question, does the leader think that the poor handling of this report in postponing 2 of the recommendations reflects badly on the reputation of the council, and that behind closed doors discussions not involving all members of the group undermines the claims of open and transparent working.
Councillor Flitter.
I certainly do not agree with that. And I think that we've had so much pressure from outside sources that work has been taken away from the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group. And I hope that people will let this group carry on the good work. It is different from what the last administration put forward, because I will not intervene at any stage until their report has come. The Alliance leadership has looked at it, and therefore we can bring another report back to Council. We were assured that there are misgivings. We were advised that we had to rescind other information from November 22, but that's the way that we felt that was necessary. And then we will look at everything again to make sure that we get it absolutely right. If we get it wrong, we'll admit it. We won't sit back and paper over the cracks like the last administration did.
Supplementary. Yep, number 2 then, thank you.
Derbyshire Dales District Council has a duty of care to some of the most vulnerable traveller families. The Gypsy and Traveller Working Group were recently presented with 2 costed options for sanitary facilities at Matlock Station. Why do they not form part of the recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. I was waiting for the second paragraph, not the second question, but just to remain, I will just comment on the second paragraph because that was the decision of the Alliance members of the group. The question number 2, the toilet and sanitary facilities, I believe were discussed at the group. Costings were given by officers, but the amount of the costs that were involved at that particular time, no decision was made because of other possibilities that lay on the table at that time.
Councillor Hobson, I've just been brought to my attention that supplementary questions are only relevant under 15.3 and 15.4 and not for urgent questions, so you will not be entitled to a supplementary question.
I will.
Can you please move on to your third question? Thank you.
Despite the press release, there is no mention in the revised agenda of what postponed actually means. Can the Leader of the Council provide a clear timeline for this? Because there's been great confusion in our communities.
Sorry, Sue, but I don't want to be flippant. But if you look in the dictionary, postpone is cause or arrange something to take place at a later time than first scheduled. And I didn't want to, we weren't using the words put off, defer, or anything else that's in that dictionary. As far as the timeline, I am not going to sit here making a commitment or set any targets, as we need to sit down, discuss these issues again, go through them thoroughly, and then come back with a report that I hope that every member of this council could support.
Councillor Fitter, can I say I do find that a flippant response when people are looking at that report and seeing postponed, it's been taken off the agenda, it makes the district council look ridiculous. Do you not care about the travellers? Do you not care about the people in our communities?
Thank you, Councillor Hobson. Can we move on to Councillor Anthony Bates? Councillor Bates, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to, the first question, the specific recommendation for Fish Ponds Meadow, Overstwill Car Park, Ashbourne, and Old Station Road Car Park, Rowsley, have been postponed. Can the Leader of the Council explain why these 2 sites were chosen? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Anthony, but I'm not a member of that group, so I assume the Roseley site I can understand why that decision was made, because it is council land, it's well screened and well contained. So whether it is suitable under any other guise, I don't know. But that's what I imagine the group would have found. The fish pond meadows, I have to tell you that was not one of my thoughts of using fish pond meadows. I didn't agree under the last administration that was a suitable ground, but the whole point of setting up a new group, new ideas, new eyes to look at a different situation, that's what they came up with. And I've already said, I'm not like the last leadership. I will not get involved until we're all ready to make a decision. This is work that they have had commissioned, and they have a right to put their view forward.
Your second question.
Thank you, Chair. As a new Derbyshire Dales District Council member, I find it very strange that less than a year from a decision being made that gave a clear view that the car parks are not suitable, these sites are again being brought forward. Can the leader of the council please explain why we appear to be going backwards? Thank you.
Well, I'm very clear again that the review should examine all possibilities with a new, fresh approach. Many sites have good reason to be discounted, and nobody has said that these sites would be counted in the future. So, I'm sorry, but we talk about going backwards. I think that we're going forwards because we're learning a lot of things here. I think to put the traveller, we're trying to put forward the views of the traveller site. I agree that car parks are not suitable places, and I think we would all agree with that. But with the lack of land available at the moment, that's where we have to put them. I want to see all car parks clear, but we have to come up with a solution. So we do agree with you on that, but we want to go forward. We're stagnating at the moment because of other pressures that I've mentioned, but we do want to move forward, and we want to do it with your help as well.
Councillor Murphy, you've got 3 questions, I believe, you want to ask. Thank you.
Vulnerable travellers, businesses and residents had clarity and finality in November 2022, when all Derbyshire Dales district sites were dismissed as being unsuitable apart from Matlock Station and Matlock Bath Station. What has materially changed to any of those sites since that time?
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. I totally disagree. Residents did not have clarity because if you failed to get, well, the Conservatives failed to find a solution. And without a solution, there is no guarantee, no clarity, and no finality. The only change is that a site on the agenda later has been given planning permission. Everything else is as it was.
Your second question, please.
Can I just make a comment there? I would like to remind people that it was the Conservatives who came up with Matlock Bath Station as a possible temporary tolerated site, and hardly anybody in this room offered any sites at all. So
Thanks for your comment. Can you make your second question?
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Can the leader of the council confirm his commitment to the process for the Woodyard site?
As per a commitment to the process for the Woodyard site, we will engage with the owners to assess their present position, of which yet we do not know, apart from hearsay. Members must realise and must be aware that the Woodyard is in private ownership, and they can, if they wish, develop and manage it. but we are keen to show concern for those in Derbyshire families, and we must put our responsibilities to test to house those Derbyshire families that are in need. And I'm talking about the Matlock Bath family and also the Matlock families. They are our responsibility. We will do our best what we can. But the site is private. We're not going to wait for them. We are going to approach, and then we see where we go from there. But it may be that we have to go through legalities yet again. I don't know, but we are on the trail.
And your final question, please, Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. When will the consultation process start, and will the leader confirm that the report will be ready for the November 2023 meeting?
That, Chair, Councillor Murphy, that depends on your decisions tonight. And then it depends on the working group reassembling, assessing what you've decided tonight, and then these consultations, after consultation with the officers, may go ahead. Your question related to the November meeting, that I can tell you is a very short timescale. It may come in if that is moved to later in November, but I very, very much doubt it. But it will come to council very soon, and if we have to get a special meeting to discuss this alone, we shall do that.
Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 8, which is a proposal on notice of motion under Rule of Procedure 16. And this is a motion from Councillor Burton. Councillor Burton, would you like to introduce your motion, please? Thank you.
Well, just to say that I would hope that members would feel able to support this notice of motion. I'm anxious, first of all, to say this is no criticism of the support staff that I have in terms of the invitations and the different events, that they, like me, have to operate under a current protocol. That protocol is very limiting for whoever in this room has that opportunity to be chair of this district. And I do seriously say I want Peter to have a better start and a better year than how it kicked off for myself, because as you see in front of you, the protocol really limits whatever you can do is just within our confines, the Derbyshire Dales. So for as an example, it was very painful to me to initially receive an invitation to go and support a charity night for the Mayor of Chesterfield at Walton Parish Church for Ashgate Hospice. But I was told that because of the protocol, that is out of our area and it's not possible for you to do that. That doesn't help in the bonding, because as others here who have had the opportunity to be chair know that it's called the chain gang. And in terms of the things that I would like to host here during my year, how can I expect their support if in fact I've not been able to go to their civic services because they're outside the Derbyshire Dales? I'm not on about opening the floodgates to going, you know, all over the country. I'm on about the direct borders of this authority to try and engender goodwill and to promote the Derbyshire Dales as best as I can during this year. The second part to the notice of motion really did concern me, and for me as a person of faith and of strong religious convictions that determines my political activities, to sort of assert that in the current protocol that we should cease holding a civic service as it isn't an inclusive community event. I don't know who came up with that one, but the church in recent years, whether it be the Methodist Church, the Anglican Church, or the Unitarians, have bent over backward in order to be inclusive. And that's not certainly my experience. And I have to say, still at the very heart of community, certainly in the Darley-Dale ward, are our faith communities. Where do the lunches happen? Where do the youth activities happen? The church is still an important part of the fabric of our communities, and for me, it, you know, would be a delight to bring the best of community together at a civic service. I have to say, though, for those that don't, and I accept there are others that would describe themselves as either atheists or agnostics, that's fine. Back in 1995, one of the best events I attended was held by a devout atheist. He didn't want a civic service, so he held at the Co-op Hall at Eckington a lecture. But ironically, who did he invite to come? It was David Jenkins, the then Bishop of Durham, and he held us spellbound. But there is the options. It doesn't have to be a religious service. For those that want to hone in from a different aspect, that opportunity hopefully is then resolved in a protocol that serves us better. So I so move that, Chair.
Thank you. At this time, do we have any questions at all of Councillor Burton? I can't see any. Councillor Slack, did you...
I'm ready to second it, Chair. I'm ready to second one.
Do you wish to...
Second it.
Yes, speak at all?
Right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I would like to second Councillor Burton's motion of a civic protocol of the civic chair's duties. In 2015, there needed to be alterations made to be cost effective, like abandoning the civic car and also the chauffeur-driven civic to events. These had to be abandoned because they were costly and unnecessary. But it was wrong to restrict charity and civic services to events to mainly the district. We are not asking the civic chair and the chauffeur to be brought back, not at all, but to go back to attending charities and civic services in the neighbouring Derbyshire local authorities. Where I live, Amber Valley is only 1 mile away, just 1 mile. It's really ridiculous that we can't go there at the moment, but this needs to be addressed. So the civic chair will use their own transport, and only the mileage will be an expense. As we move towards a combined authority, it makes sense for the district and council to coordinate and have good relationships with neighbouring districts and borough councils. Expenses in mileage is an investment in the new combined authority, which we need to embrace. Also, I support Councillor Burton's civic service or community celebration of the Derbyshire should be a decision for the civic chair to select. So I ask you to support this motion tonight. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bond.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm just noticing the proposal, and where it says in the, I don't find any issues with the first part, where it says in the second part to remove the cease holding a civic service as it isn't an inclusive community event, should that therefore then say, and to replace that with, is the second statement that each individual serving civic chair can choose whether it's appropriate during their year of office? Is that already in the statement? Or are you proposing that that's included instead?
That's included instead.
It doesn't make that clear, does it?
I don't think it does.
No, and so I assume it means, and to replace it with. Is that right?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Would you be happy if that wording that you mentioned was in the actual...
Absolutely, Chair. I assume that was the intention.
Yes,
it may just be a typing error.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Councillor Burton, are you happy that that amendment should...
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish... Councillor Boynton.
Chair, we talk about it neighbouring areas of Derbyshire. Of course, we neighbour with Staffordshire as well, so do we need to put some parameters on where we need this to include, which includes another county, as opposed to just Derbyshire.
That's a good point. Do you want to... Councillor Pitt. I was just going to answer the question, because I do feel that we do adjoin like Cheshire. No, we don't. We do adjoin other counties. So I know for a fact that there are other counties that you get requests for. So it could be adjoining counties. I mean, the thing is, we don't want to be travelling too far, but I understand why Staffordshire should be added onto that. Yeah, I've got it on here that it has been amended to say adjoining local authorities. Would you be happy with that, Councillor Boynton?
If the definition of that includes other counties, then yes.
Yes, yeah, well, there are other local authorities. Councillor Flitter?
Yes, Chair, I was just going to support that point because I think I was the last chair of this council that actually used the Civic car. And the point of the Civic car then was one of security because some events that I went to, I was even given a bodyguard to walk at the side of me. Sometimes a little bit smaller than myself, but very, very well equipped. But, you know, it's an important point. I do worry about the security of whoever's in the chair and going to events, having to park a car in a car park, walk about. But we did realise the financial constraints that we had, and I did support that recommendation. But I do think it's important because it's not just Staffordshire Moorlands that I got involved with, but it's South Derbyshire, it's North East Derbyshire, you know, and you've got to build contacts. And that's what partnership is all about, making contacts with people, discussing things with people. Often in the past, this council has had officer representation at various events, but we never get to hear about that. And I think that the members ought to have that opportunity to build relationships throughout the Dales, throughout Derbyshire, and sometimes further abroad. So I'm very in favour of opening up again and making it a meaningful piece of work for this council.
Thank you, Councillor Burford.
Just a small point, Chair. We're talking about adjoining authorities, but Councillor Burton mentioned Chesterfield. I don't think it's strictly speaking adjoining Derbyshire Dales, so can we sort of have a bit of flexibility in that? Because obviously, as he said, it's Walton is very close to Matlock, but there's not North East Derbyshire between the two, so it needs to be taken fairly flexibly, I suspect.
I think personally we can get, you know, we can get hung up on geographics. We need to move on with the evening. I do feel that it is important, having been a Civic chair in 21-22, I went through what Councillor Burton, the issues he went to, and I was told that, you know, it gets very embarrassing when you go to, sounds awful, but a garden party at Buckingham Palace and you're not allowed to wear your chain, and you go and all the other Derbyshire chairs are wearing chains, and you do feel different, and I think it's very important that we do look at these changes. That's my own personal view. But, so, are there any more specific questions that anybody wants to ask? So would we be happy to, if the amendments from Councillor Bates and also Councillor Boynton, and if we gave it to appropriate local authorities nearby or something like that, that would be okay? So, having done that, I think it's about time. Does anybody want to enter into any debate on it? No, thank goodness. So, at the end of the day, I think what we need to do is vote. So, all those in favour of the amendment and also Councillor Burton's recommendation? Is there anybody against? And is there anybody who wants to abstain? So I move that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. My button's not working. We now move on to motion B, which is the council will debate the following motion submitted by Councillor G in accordance with Rule 16. Councillor G, would you like to present your motion? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll start by just reading the motion for the benefit of everybody. Just so I'll put that in line with the new council's progressive objectives as presented by the council leader at the AGM. Derbyshire Dales District Council takes back control the running of Monsal Head toilets. In doing this, and in order to minimise the in-year cost to the council, with an aim for cost neutrality, the council would need to invest in an infrastructure upgrade by installing a card payment system. The outcome would be to guarantee the existence of this vital public service going forward under sustainable means and give improvement to the residents of the Bakewell ward, along with the many visitors to this iconic tourist destination in the Derbyshire Dales. I would ask to prevent the possible loss of this service, the action is undertaken without delay in a timely manner. And I'd just like to say, firstly, I listened to the comments from Claire, and I'd like to thank Claire and Mark and the directors of the CIC for the extremely good work they've done in keeping this service open to the public. As a new member in Bakewell, I was invited to become a director on this, obviously to continue it. And, you know, I'm new, they've done all the work, I've seen what they've done, and I could just see that I think this council could support this type of service because it's really important. I mean, Monsal Head is an extremely important destination in Derbyshire Dales. We all know, we all take friends there, we go with us. It's not just for the Bakewell residents, it's for everybody in Derbyshire. And, you know, the fact that the toilets and the car park are owned by the council is a no-brainer to me. And I actually believe that if it's run properly and the right investments put in, it could actually earn some money for the council. So I just think I'd like to put this to you. And I really would like to thank Claire for, you know, she had presented her accounts type of work, and I think she's done a fabulous job. And Mark's done exceptional, but I think it's sort of beyond the call of duty. So I put it forward for discussion.
So you're moving that motion?
Yes, I'm moving it. Yeah.
Councillor Hughes, questions, please. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I was sensitive to Claire Gamble's comment that it was costing. She'd put £1,000 of her own money into the CIC, and also Mark Bateman had done the same. And this is a cause of concern for me because it's not a huge contribution, but it is a significant contribution to, and one that we should be very appreciative of under the circumstances. Chair, may I ask Councillor G what the current situation is with the finances of the CIC and whether there is a loss, an annual loss, or of any significance at this stage?
Basically, as far as I can see at the moment, it's more or less breaking even. We're obviously coming out of COVID, and I've noticed there's more visitors going there. But I know Mark's had to involve himself in getting things fixed when damage has been done, etc. And we're not talking about huge amounts of money, and and there's a lot of people visiting that site. So I don't think, I mean, the accounts are open for the council to look at. You know, the officers are obviously going to have access to that. So, but this isn't going to be large amounts of money. And, you know, they're talking about replacing a cistern. I mean, I'm talking about putting some infrastructure. Well, I'm not discussing private accounts. They're talking about the cost implications to the council, which, well, and I'm not discussing the cost implications. I'm just saying I don't think it'll be large.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Can someone explain why we have a director of a company with a turnover in excess of £8,000 bringing a proposal that the council takes over his own company?
Yeah, I asked a similar question, and I'll defer to the temporary monitoring officer. Thank you.
I'm not sure about the term temporary.
Well, Jason, then.
Thank you, Chair. The advice given to the councillors who are directors of the community interest company is that, according to the council's constitution, they don't have a disclosable pecuniary interest as defined in the code of conduct. Therefore, there is no provision within the council's standing orders that prevents them from participating in a discussion on the matter. The relevant item is the council's code of conduct, and that refers to conflicts of interest. And the code of conduct that was approved recently by the council states that it is up to the individual councillors to decide whether they have a conflict of interest or not.
Does that answer your question, Councillor O'Brien?
Have a conflict of interest? What is the consequence of that?
My advice to a member that feels that they've got a conflict of interest is that they shouldn't participate in any discussion.
Any more questions? Does it? Your microphone's on, Councillor G. I'm sorry. Yeah. Just, is this a question, or because I was about to go into debate?
Chair, I would like to put forward an amendment.
No, just wait a minute, because, sorry, my fault. We need to find somebody. Is anybody willing to second the motion? Councillor Wakeman seconds the motion. Do you wish to say anything, Councillor Wakeman? No. So the motion has been moved and seconded. Moving to debate. Anybody wish to speak? Councillor Burford, did you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to put forward an amendment, please. Can I thank Councillor G for bringing this up tonight? He will know that there is a working party set up, what I call the toilet working party, but I think my amendment is going round.
Can Councillor...
I can't answer that. You are now. The toilet working party has met, and we are due to have a meeting very soon. So my amendment is as follows.
Sorry, Chair.
Councillor G, can Councillor Burford finish hers, and then obviously if she's making an amendment, then you are perfectly at liberty to ask questions.
So the amendment goes as follows, and this comes from the Alliance Working Party. So that, as this council recognises the need to keep open the toilets at Monsal Head and acknowledges the work carried out by those who have worked to keep them open following the previous administration's decision in 2018 to close them, this motion be referred to the next meeting of the Public Conveniences Working Group with the ward members and directors of the Monsal Head CIC invited to attend that meeting to help inform a strategy to ensure a long-term sustainable future for the Monsal Head toilets.
Thank you, Councillor Burford. Does that amendment find any seconder? Councillor Boothroyd, do you wish to speak?
I'm okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, so it's been moved and it's been seconded. Questions, Councillor Flitter?
Well, a question and part of the debate, because just to answer the questions that there is a working party. It is a working party that I set up from the Alliance point of view because the last administration closed the toilets, and I have a number of issues which there are working parties working towards with Alliance members. And this is operational. It's a very valid operational need that feeds in information from officers and takes views from members. And then we can come back and report things to council after coming through the Alliance leadership. That's just to clear that point up. I would like to ask a question at some stage, and I hope that this information will come through to the working group, is actually how much it does cost for the cleaning, because I've heard one or two different comments about the cost of cleaning and who do you use for cleaning. Sometimes it's local people, sometimes it's a company, and that's where the costs escalate. But I just want to point out that this is not unique. Only last week I had an invitation from Overhaddon Parish Council to go and discuss their car park and toilet issues. And Councillor Wakeman was present with, was it Zena that was with us off the Parish Council? Unfortunately, Gareth didn't manage to pick up the email till it was too late, but it was a window in my calendar where I went up, I had words, we discussed it with them, and there are issues which I think we could help, not other parish councils, but Monsal Head included, and I think we could get a scheme of help going along there, but we have to understand and we have to examine those costs very thoroughly, because we can't do every toilet, but what we wanting to look for is a hotspot, and the hotspots are where we're going to get visitors, and Lathkill and Monsal Head come under that, to me, come under that jurisdiction, along with others like in Ashbourne. So we are conscious, we want to get that moving, we want to get those lists of hotspots available so we can work on and discuss with those parishes that are involved and any other group that is keen, because I know that some of those closures are just impossible to reopen for one reason or another. But those that are, we can only do it with a step change, bit by bit, but we do want to provide the service for the visitors that are coming here and contributing to our visitor economy.
Councillor Wakeman.
Yes, Chair. Is it possible to have the names of these councillors on this working group, on the toilet working group?
I'm happy to give
Councillor Burford, can you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Boothroyd, Councillor Gretrix and myself. Officers to assist.
Councillor Whitehead, you've got a question or a debate, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just say kind of how disappointing both kind of motions are. Why should we be making any toilet in the Dales a kind of, why are we picking one out? I represent a community that has over 1.2 million people coming to it. That was in 2019, so probably even more now. We used to have 3 sets of toilets in Matlock Bath to service that community, those visitors. We now only have 1, and it's insufficient. So I don't understand why we're trying to make, while I completely sympathise with the situation, as with many other areas of the Dales, I don't know why we're making this a special area of treatment. Surely you should allow the working group to conclude its work in all fairness without trying to push additional pressure on them and let them come back with their report and we'll act on that. I would ask Council to vote down both motions.
Councillor Dobbs, did you have your hand up?
I did. We're in debate, aren't we?
Yep.
Sort of. Yes, just that can we have an orderly queue for these toilets in the working group? Because I think special cases are just going to be a mess. I think we have to let that process go. And it is an alliance working group. I don't see any problem with that.
Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. We're getting a bit of a theme here with these little groups of people that we didn't know anything about. So much for openness and transparency. I'm sure Councillor G wouldn't have come with his motion tonight. He's not trying to push in front of anybody else. He's just trying to sort out this situation. I'm really concerned about this. You know, just having these little groups. You know, you say you don't interfere with things, Councillor Flitter. At the first meeting of the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group, Councillor Frank said, oh, no, we're not having a chair. We don't need one. It's going to be a conversation, Councillor Flitter says. And we've got to have 3 sites north, south and central. So don't tell me that you're not interfering. Thank you.
Councillor G, I'm going to take you till the end, so just bear with me 1 second. Councillor Lees?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, like Councillor Hobson, I was at a meeting last night with Councillor Dobbs, and I felt very, very embarrassed, to be honest, to find out that there was a toilet working group, and I sort of knew nothing about it, heard nothing about it, and it was very disappointing that we hadn't been told. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy?
Thank you, Chair. On this side of the room, we represent 34% of the voters in Derbyshire Dales. I think it's a disgrace, really, that we've got these committees. This one we've just found out about now. What other committees do you have that we are not involved in?
Is there anybody else wishing to speak on the amendment? Councillor O'Brien.
I just want to say I think this is an entirely appropriate amendment. I don't think the toilets at Monsal Head should have been closed in the first place. They're in a location where it hasn't been feasible or possible for the toilets to be adopted by a local parish council, as they have in my own ward in Eam, and I think it's quite appropriate that we look to a way in which the council can in future support the reopening of these vital facilities. Thank you, Chair.
Right, there's nobody else wishing to speak. Councillor G, you're entitled to come back at the end of the amendment. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to come back actually on this, because I'm slightly amazed, to be honest, because, I came to this council in May and I listened to the mission statement of Councillor Flitter, and it picked up straight away about the toilets. It was involved in his speech. Now, I could see the situation in Monsal Head. This is your perfect opportunity to do what you said you were going to do, and you don't want to know. I mean, we've got a situation where it's a vital service, and no, it is, it's completely. And Councillor Flitter talks about toilets in Over Aden. He'd sent an email to Mark and I at 10:30 on a Saturday morning to go to this exceptional meeting at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. I haven't heard anything from Overham Parish Council about their toilets since May. I haven't had it. I get a lot of emails into my inbox. I think suddenly I've brought this up for you, and I want to see if you actually want to do it. Do you? Monsal Head toilets need sorting. Get behind my motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor G. Nobody else wishing to speak. It's been moved and it's been seconded, so we're talking about the amendment. So all those in favour of the amendment, please. And all those against, please. So, any abstentions? No. The amendment is carried, and now we go back to the original motion.
So Chair, the amendment as moved is now the original motion, so it's open to councillors if they wish to move amendments to that. If not, then we go to the vote on that substantive.
So we're going to go back, so the amendment is moved, so we're going to go back to the original motion, and that will include the motion. So,
sorry, Chair, just to clarify. So basically, we had a motion on the floor. An amendment was moved to that. That amendment has been approved, and it now becomes part of the substantive motion. It is open to members to move amendments to that substantive motion. If there are no further amendments, then we will go to vote on that substantive motion.
Thank you. So, are there any amendments, or Councillor Whitehead?
Yes, so I would like to propose an amendment that we remove the specific kind of reference to Monsal Head, and we apply it to all toilets in the Dales.
So Councillor Whitehead is going to move that. Does that vote in favour? So Councillor Whitehead has moved that. Does that find a seconder?
Chair, before we, can I speak? Yeah.
You can speak.
Before we move to that, can I suggest that that will effectively, and I'm not sure I disagree with this, so I think I'm supporting this, but the implication of that is that it makes the working group a working group for the council rather than for the alliance, because it will because Councillor G would then become a member of the working group, and so would the CIC directors. So now I'm not saying I'm against it, but I think that's the overall implication of that.
Councillor Hughes, I think it's another one where we're getting very muddled up with this. Councillor Whitehead has put forward a motion that we remove the Monsal Head. Obviously, the motion was initially moved as an amendment. There's an amendment, and it included Monsal Head. Yeah. What it's got to be, the original motion is about Monsal Head, and you've got Councillor G and other people that are involved in that. So it's got to be relevant to the motion. And part of the things that we can do, we can alter and add words, or we can actually send it to a committee. So I think by taking that out, I can see your point, but I think that would take away and not make it within the spirit of the amendment. Do you want to come back on that?
I could. It just seems completely unfair because we now put the working group, and if it becomes a council working group, we give them a remit to only be focusing on Monsal Head. How's that possibly fair to any other kind of ward in the district? We're kind of by referencing Monsal Head.
Chair, can I raise a point of order? Chair, we have a proposal for an amendment which requires a seconder. Can we stick to the
you can,
way the
you can.
business?
Does that find a seconder to remove Monsal Head? No. So I'm afraid we can't take that. So are there any other people that want to speak on it? Councillor Wakeman.
Can I ask one more question? Is it possible that some from this side of the House can go onto this working group?
Can I suggest that that is something that we can decide, you can discuss outside the meeting. I think it's really important that we move on with the business tonight, because we're nearly at 2 hours and the two large matters are coming up. So we'll go back to the original motion as per the amendment. Does anybody else wish to say anything?
Can I move the motion, Chair?
You can. Yeah. So can we vote, please? All those in favour of the motion? Oh, is it second? Can we just have somebody second it? Sorry. Sorry.
Can we have clarification, please, Chair?
The mover of the original motion has the right.
Yeah. So.
Chair, I am moving the substantive motion as circulated on the separate paper, which we all have in front of us.
Yeah, apparently that doesn't require moving, so we'll go straight to the vote on the full. No, Councillor G can come back. Thank you.
Yeah, so, from this, I thought this might be a simple procedure where the special coalition sort of reaffirm their commitment to public services in places like Monsal, but obviously they've decided to run away from it, which I'm really disappointed about. Thank you.
So now we're going to the vote. So can you please, all those in favour? The original motion.
Sorry, are you clear on what we're voting for? We're So basically, we're voting that amendment. It's now the substantive motion, yeah?
It does say on here that they will attend a strategy and discuss, and tend to help inform a strategy, right, in relation to Monsal Head. So can we vote on that? All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31.
Against?
One chair.
And any abstentions?
That's carried.
So I find that carried. Thank you. Right, we move on to agenda. We move on to agenda item 9, the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Has everybody had sight opportunity to read the minutes? Thank you. Does anybody wish to move them? Councillor Lees, second. Councillor Burfoot. So now we'll vote. All those in favour? David Byrne is not voting.
So that's just one abstention.
All those against? Abstentions? 1. Sorry, 2. That's carried. Thank you.
Chair, could I ask we have a comfort break now before the next item?
Yeah, Councillor O'Brien, I think that would be a marvellous idea. We'll have a comfort break before we move on. So can we be back in here by 8:05? Thank you. Right, we're just waiting for one person to come back in. Whilst we're waiting for that, Councillor Fritter, I understand you wish to make a comment.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I want to offer my apologies to Councillor Hobson. I think I'm man enough to stand up and say that I was probably wrong in the words I used about abusive emails. It is true that I was only told about them and not seen it, and perhaps I shouldn't have said that. So I do apologise, but things were getting a little bit heated because I'm amazed that so many people don't understand the process of what we were trying to go through. But my apologies are sincere, and I hope that Councillor Hobson does accept them.
Thank you, Councillor Flitter.
Councillor Fitter, your apology is accepted. Thank you for being man enough to say that so quickly. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So we'll move on with item 10, which is the Gypsy and Traveller site provision in the district report. And this is unusual because it's been done by the Gypsy Traveller Working Group. So Councillor Franks is the chair of that group, but also it should be noted that...
Not a chair.
Sorry, lead member, but it should be noted that there are 3 other members on that actual committee, and they are Councillor Hobson, Councillor Boothroyd and Councillor Slack. So, sorry. Councillor Maelstrom, that's it, I was looking, I couldn't see through. Right, thanks very much. So, Councillor Franks, I'll hand on to you. Thank you.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the members of the public for the representations and apologise for confusion that may have been caused by the recommendations in relation to temporary traveller sites which have now been withdrawn. I'd like to briefly address this before moving on to the final recommendations that are to be put before the meeting tonight. We have 2 Gypsy families who identify and are from this area. They total around 15 souls for whom we have a statutory responsibility. They currently live as a temporary measure in separate car parks until 2 permanent sites can be found and delivered. The Matlock Station car park was agreed as an appropriate temporary site, and although not ideal, by the previous working group. And one of the families had agreement to stay in the Matlock Bath car park, but this was only until mid-January of this year. So in effect, this agreement has been exceeded by 9 months. At this time of year, the Matlock Bath car park is one of the busiest and probably busiest in the Dales. It's filling up with thousands of visitors from far away and wide Matlock Bath, as well as Dales folk. Families with children who come to see the attractions and illuminations. This situation is far, far from ideal, and therein lies the dilemma. And it's due to this that the majority of the working group saw a need to look again at other car parks owned by the District Council, but to do this in an open way. And when we talked of consultations of 6 weeks, this was a minimum. It wasn't, you've got to have it all done in 6 weeks. This was an absolute minimum. And we were talking in terms of multiple ways of consulting, in terms of online, face-to-face meetings, so that as many people as possible in a wider geographical area could be open and made their views known. So what is needed now? We still have to identify a temporary site for this family. We still have that responsibility. So how do we do this? And following all the representations, and I read many hundreds of emails and listened carefully tonight, what we do need, we need a far more robust set of criteria in order to assess the suitability of any prospective temporary site, which to the fore puts safeguarding and social needs. And this we need as a working group to look at and agree. And when we come up with a proposal, and I hope we can do this very quickly, we can put this to the council's leadership team to approval before we make any proposals for any more consultations about any further temporary sites. So I'd like to now move on to what we have presented in the report tonight. And this is really important because the working group have outlined processes for decision making and consultation with local communities. We've also looked at tenancy agreements. I know they're referred to as lease agreements within the report, but you know, they are in I think Dr. Spencer was right, they are indeed tenancy agreements. And these, we talked about this, but probably didn't spend enough time on them, outlining expectations of behaviour and responsibilities. Once we do have permanent sites, these will be a necessity. And also, this should include the roles and responsibilities of the council towards the tenants, as well as the tenants. The report also makes some recommendations in respect of funding. We do have to test out the viability of any possible permanent site. We need to know what it's going to cost to ensure that we can develop it in an appropriate manner to provide decent accommodation and space for the families involved. Due diligence has to be part and parcel of this, and in any acquisition and development of a permanent site. Hence, it's difficult to do any of this at great speed. However, especially when large financial commitments are going to be made. However, I don't want this to slow down the process. I urge officers and members to proceed with all possible haste, especially as there is an opportunity on the horizon that we need to be looking at very seriously and very quickly. But I think we have to bear in mind we also need a second site, which is why some of the proposals that are in the report concern the need for additional officer hours to help search and look at alternative permanent sites, along with what is already on offer. Thank you. Anything more to say?
Thank you, Councillor Franks. Do you have any questions, please? Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Franks, thank you for that. And I'd also like to thank everybody who has made representations either by email or telephone or come to speak tonight. It's most useful for all the members to see that. Marilyn, you've actually used the word withdrawn about the proposals. You know, we are dealing with, you know, not postponement. Are we talking they are withdrawn?
Sorry. Apologies for that. That's verbal. In the report, as you see, it's postponed. Because at this point in time, we need to examine everything again. We do have this really difficult situation where we haven't actually, you know, the previous group approved Matlock Bath up until mid-January. I think the 19th of January was specified. At the moment, we have a family living on one of the busiest car parks in the Dales. We've already heard mention in another capacity the 1.2 million visitors. This is the peak period. Representations haven't been made at this meeting from the people of Matlock Bath, but I can assure you my email box is loaded with representations of a similar nature to all the representations made tonight in relation to Matlock Bath. I'm not saying Matlock Bath wouldn't be appropriate again, possibly over for the similar, you know, a short period during the time when it isn't busy. But I think we have to have other options on the table as well as Matlock Bath for this family. Matlock Bath cannot be a longish, like the Matlock Station car park, it cannot be used full time. It is at all, I would suggest, in this matter.
My second question is, you've gone through, we talked about all these proposals earlier on, and I was looking at Dr. Spencer, who is obviously a total expert in all of this, and she says a lot of this that you're proposing, this delay, is irrelevant. Can you,
I think,
according to her, she's the expert. She was quoting law.
Yeah. I think the issue here is the responsibility that the officers of the council and members of the council, the due diligence that has to, again, I think it's written in law, demonstrate that they are spending money appropriately and wisely. And they are legally, I think, obviously, if legally, if the officers were advised by the council solicitors that they could instantly go and spend money, then I would be saying, go ahead and do it now, But I think we've got to practice due diligence when we're talking about spending a lot of money and committing the council to a large amount of cash. We can't do it without that.
And my final question, because I will come and speak in the debate as well. We've all seen the emails and the representations that have come through to the council and specifically the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group. Will the leadership and the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group commit to answering each of those emails on an individual basis? I don't mean a generic, your email's been noted, that you prove that you've actually read and listened to what these people have had to say. That's the least that you can do.
I think most of the emails went jointly to yourself and other members of the group. I think it's not just my responsibility to individually write back
No,
to
I'm saying
hundreds of people.
all of us. I've responded to all the emails I've got, and I've noted what people have said, and you give those people credit for their views. And it's not for this council to dictate. You take people's views seriously, whether it be Dr. Spencer or a resident or a parish council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hobson. Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not quite sure who to address this question to, because it's about the item 3, which references the November 22 report. So possibly somebody was on that previous Gypsy and Traveller Working Group, I don't know. Could somebody clarify if this is concerning the usable area of the listed sites? Is that the issue that requires the amendment? Because when I was checking those, there did seem to be, when you check them on mapping, the actual usable area, assuming it's in hectares on that particular table, is significantly smaller than that which is listed. And presumably, is it somebody could verify that is why this particular site, that's the coach park by the leisure centre, so-called Clifton Road, although it's not actually on Clifton Road, it's on Leisure Way. But that car park has apparently going to be looked at again. I mean, it does, I think, highlight the whole point about that. Really good table, but not a very precise instrument to rank car parks when you're making clearly such enormous decisions on that basis. Thank you.
Is that something that you
My
can...
understanding, I'm not an expert. I think the measurements were wrong. I think that's it. But somebody will confirm later if that was it. I think that's it.
We're not. The report is actually suggesting that it is updated, so the measurements are correct. Clifton Road wasn't being proposed as a possible temporary site for consultation.
Thank you.
Just to clear that up.
Mr. Braund, I think you might be able to shed some light on this. Thank you.
Yeah, whilst the conversation wasn't held directly with me, it was held with James McLaughlin. I'm aware of a conversation he had with the resident there. Part of that related to the area, the usable area of the car park, as Councillor Dobbs has said, and part of it related to the more subjective assessment undertaken by planning policy colleagues in relation to the planning policies that relate to Gypsy and Traveller sites. So it's a bit of both, I think.
Thank you. And next is Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. These 27 sites, there was obviously a working group last year, and they did some sterling work. They went to lots of sites, and they looked at all these sites in detail. Now, it was a good cross-section of everybody in this room. Maybe there's some others, some characters aren't here anymore, and, you know, I remember, what's his name? Mike Radcliffe saying that it was one of the best working groups he'd ever been on. There was good consensus from everybody on the sites. I believe...
Can you come to your question, please? Thank you.
I will do.
No, I'm asking you, can you come to your question? Because we're not in debate, we're in questions. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. So I'm intrigued as what could be possibly different this time when we looked at all the sites. It wasn't a political decision. So can you please share with me how you think this is going to be different this time?
Councillor Maelstrom?
Thank you. Yes, I'll happily respond to that. The problem we're facing is not that anything's changed. The problem is that nothing's changed and no new sites have come forward. When the group met in November of last year and looked at all those sites, I think it was envisaged that new sites would be brought forward in the coming months as an alternative for the family now at Matlock Bath, and that simply hasn't been the case. So the working group as presently constituted was faced with the problem of having nothing to look at. Officers, as I understand it, have in the intervening 10 months made strenuous efforts to locate alternative sites for the working group to look at through calls out, through the appointment of agents. No alternative sites have come forward. So we're in the situation of acknowledging that none of those sites are suitable. So we have to look for the least unsuitable option. And in the opinion of the majority of the working group, Matlock Bath Station is not the least worst option. It's one of the worst options in the long term. It may have been suitable for the short term to January of this year, but when an amendment was proposed back in November to allow a longer duration of stay on Matlock Bath car park, that amendment was voted down. So the previous council obviously thought Matlock Bath Station was not suitable for occupation any longer than January of this year. So that's the situation we're faced in. Matlock Bath Station is not suitable, and it's a matter of, in desperate circumstances, having to find the least worst option.
Councillor Bates? Just before we do, because we're coming up to 1:30, so can I have anybody who'd like to recommend another half an hour at least?
Chair, I'll move that we
extend
for...
Yeah.
To come
Seconded by Councillor Slack. All those in favour, please. Well, what time would you like to go to?
I was going to give an hour.
Well, 9:30. So, all those in favour of 9:30? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Bates.
I was going to answer Councillor Dobbs, if that was okay, on the Clifton Road car park. The problem, because I was in touch with the local resident that Brunt had been mentioning, the whole of the area, even the grassed areas, trees and everything was taken into that area, not just the tarmac area. And that's why it was deemed inappropriate, because the actual size of the plot is not big enough.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Lees? Anybody else got... just got Councillor Whitehead.
Yes, so kind of just a quick question. Thank you for the report. It's a good report. It's pleasing from a Matlock Bath point of view to be able to see the majority of the working group see that Matlock Bath is not a suitable place. But I don't see any recommendation in the recommendations. Could I just ask a question about why we don't see a recommendation for council
if you can come to your question, that would be great.
That is my question. Why is there no recommendation to that point?
Right. Anybody off the committee who can, off the working group, that can answer that?
I think upon hearing all the representations over the last week, the members of the alliance of the group felt that we needed to take a step back. We need to have a completely fresh look at temporary sites, and tonight focus on pushing ahead as fast as we could with not losing a possible permanent site. In terms of time, we didn't have a meeting. It was just a couple of phone calls and a discussion with how we could do this. And I'm sorry we didn't contact you, but to try to postpone any discussion and consultation that we'd arranged regarding the temporary sites until a later date, until we'd worked on some really more robust criteria.
Thank you. Councillor Waitman. Question.
Yes, Chair. If Matlock Bath car park isn't good enough, what you're saying is nowhere's good enough. It's nice, hard standing. It's a lit up area. So if that's now good, nothing is. You can't get a better site. Hard standing. Where other site has got that?
I don't know whether that was quite a question, but
well,
you made your point.
Matlock Bath is not good enough, then none of the other sites are any good, are they?
So do you want to ask a question?
Yeah,
from
I'm
that?
asking why it's not good enough. And if it's not good enough, then none of the other sites are good enough. Because the one at Roseley's a muddy area.
Councillor Slack, who is on the working group, would like to answer that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's better sites than the one at Station Car Park at Matlock Bath, because it's right next to the river. In fact, there's rats running about there. It's not a good position to be there. But the better car park is on the Temple Car Park, which is the top side of Matlock Bath. It's away from the river. It's much more comfortable there for them, and that would be a good temporary site again to go to, Temple. They've been there before and they've always been happy there. So, but again, we need permanent sites. That's the answer. Thank you, Chair.
Right, I've got Councillor.
Point of order. Can I suggest that we do not mention other sites, because all that will do is set the hares chasing once again. We have no mention of the Temple Car Park site anywhere in any of the reports. I think we should disregard that suggestion as a recommendation. It has been done not on the basis of any criteria. We should disregard it completely and strike that from the minutes, because at this stage we're debating a motion that does not include a Temple Car Park. Thank you.
Well, we're not actually in debate. Yes, but
I'll
yes,
come back in debate on that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Next on my list is Councillor Melstrom for a question, please.
I think I was actually volunteering an answer, but I think we've moved on, Chair. So.
Thank you very much for clarification. Are there any more questions that we need to be asking? So, would anybody like to recommend the...
I would like to recommend accepting the recommendations of the report and like to move towards debate now.
So it's been moved and it's been seconded. So the 8 recommendations that are here in front of us, and then that's been seconded by Councillor Slack. So now we'll move into debate. Anybody got anything? Councillor Lees was first on the debate.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Going back to Councillor Dobbs's question, I was on the earlier question, should I say? I was on the original working group, which we travelled around all of these sites over a period of a couple of days. We was all given site plans of every car park we went to. Evidence here that some of those sites, as Councillor Dobbs said and Councillor Bates has brought up, weren't as per plan. And we did get clarification. We've got official land registry documents that give us the truth of the size of those plans. So, yes, you're quite right in what you said, and some of the plans that we were given was wrong. We went round all those sites. Nothing's changed with them sites. I can't see the point of we're going back in time, if you like, going looking at all these sites again. Why don't the working group just get round all the estate agents? It'd be more valuable going round all the estate agents and look for a piece of land. It's not going to work on a car park. We've already been through that umpteen times. The only answer, in my opinion, is a piece of suitable land, which I think the time would be better spent before we involve any agents. It's costing a lot of money. Get round them estate agents, around all the villages, all the towns, and come back with a list of possible pieces of land. They are out there. It's just finding them. And also, I'd just like to say, we've got quite a lot of expense that we're going to be spending on the site on the A6, which surely, yes, wants moving forward, but it's costing this council a lot of money to sort these problems out, which really should be the agent's problems, not this council's, because we don't own it, we don't rent it, we've got nothing on in black and white that we're going to take it on after we've spent all this money. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. Councillor Hughes, debate.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move an amendment, which I hope that the mover and seconder will accept and to make it part of the substantive motion. And my amendment is that the council approve. Its amendment is a change to the second the second recommendation on page 18, and it's a minor amendment. The amendment is as follows. Well, the rewording is as follows for recommendation 2, that the council approves and adopts the decision-making process outlined in section 3 of the report in respect of a permanent and temporary travellers site, with the additional requirement that stage 1 includes at its first step the preparation of evaluation criteria to be applied in all cases, and the process by which those criteria would be applied. And the reason for one of the concerns I had when looking at the recommendations, the earlier recommendations, was the list of sites that was potentially being reintroduced was being done before a definitive set of criteria was adopted, and the problem with doing that is that the criteria may then be judged to be assessed against those sites, with those sites in mind, not independently. So the proposal is that the criteria are defined before we look for any more sites, and they are written in such a way that they apply to all sites. Now we know that that some of the characteristics of the traveller community will vary from one family to another, and we know that there is a safeguarding requirement. There's a need for privacy. There's a need for care and protection for residents and also for the traveller community. And I think in all of these respects, we need to express criteria which will include safeguarding for the families and for the community, privacy, and various other things. And those go beyond the site size and whether it's got the necessary utilities and so on. Perhaps safety and privacy are more important than many of those things, particularly to the traveller families. So I would like to move this amendment that should, the aim of which is to provide a set of criteria that will then be used in a process-driven way to evaluate any site proposals, candidates that come forward.
Thank you. Would you be happy to accept that amendment? as you've moved it. And Councillor Slack, would you be happy to accept that amendment?
Yeah, would Chair.
Thank you. So now we'll move on with the debate, and the next on my list is Councillor Chapman.
Thanks, Chair. What a great shame that YouTube wasn't invented 16 years ago, because then we could show that meeting of 16 years ago and just play back, and we wouldn't have to bother turning up tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Slack, I've got you down to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. One of the best sites we had was nearly in our grasp a few years back, was Watery Lane up to Ashbourne. It was the best site we've ever come across, really. It was all in position, ready to go ahead. We'd gone through planning. It was all prepared to go ahead. And then we had a change
Chair, point of order again. We're bringing it in.
Can I just finish?
Point of order. We're bringing in sites that are, and we're setting hairs racing.
Can I just say?
Can I just finish, please? Without interrupting.
Councillor Slack, can you please keep to the agenda?
Well, it's coming. I'm coming up. Coming
don't
up to it.
mention and alarm people.
If you give me
with
time,
other
David,
sites.
I'm coming
Thank
up to it. Right, that site. We had change of administration at County Hall, and it was stopped. Now, probably next year, we'll have an election again, and the change of administration may change again, and that site could well be coming in our grasp within the next 18 months.
Chair, point of order. This is
Councillor
not part of the discussion for this event.
Can we just keep it on theme and not go off onto other sites? So what we're debating is...
I finished that part now. That's the best site ever. Right, looking at sites for future, we need, same as Councillor Lee said, we need new sites looking at. Is that acceptable to talk about new sites?
I think what we're looking at, the whole gist of the whole of this debate is to seek out the best site for this area.
Well, as the Councillor Lees has already said, we need to scour everywhere we can to get new sites.
Yeah.
And I know the family want to be in the family from Matlock Bath want to be in the Aspen area. There's no doubt about that. Aspen area or below is probably the best area to go for. Some of the rural land below Ashbourne would be ideal. So that's the area we should be looking for sites.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Burford, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't necessarily agree with everything that my colleagues in the Progressive Alliance have said, but and I don't wish to absolve myself from any responsibility for the procedural oversight in bringing this initial report to the full council, but it did unfortunately coincide with the departure of our former Director of Corporate Services, James McLaughlin. But I can honestly say also, as chair of one of the two main policy committees, that I was not consulted about it, so it was published with the resulting hiatus and justified objections from residents. But can I now echo the need to understand the council's statutory duty of care to provide accommodation for these two homeless families? Some members of the public have suggested you only need one site for these families, but unfortunately these two families do not get on. So there'd probably be civil war if they were housed on one site. So we have to provide two permanent sites because they both have justification because they're based in the Derbyshire Dales. And they're being encamped on Matlock and Matlock Station car parks for longer than is acceptable. Matlock and Matlock Bath members of this council have borne the brunt of complaints from residents, businesses and visitors for far too long. And so we've got to, well, there may be temporary sites, those two, on some occasions, as other speakers have said during the debate and questions, but not as permanent sites, definitely. It's a fact that pitches for 9 caravans are specified in the current local plan, adopted back in 2017. And that includes a site outside Ashbourne, as Councillor Slacker said, but was withdrawn by the County Council when they took over control of the County Council. But ever since, the Conservative administration here has failed to find any acceptable sites after wasting money and many months in investigating 2 completely unsuitable sites. I do thank very much the current working group, who were given a very challenging task, to say the least, to recommend 2 permanent and say about 3 temporary tolerated sites, preferably in the north, central and southern areas of the district. In hindsight, I think more members should have been involved in or from the pre-May working group should have been included in this one. But anyway, that's history now. The good news is that this Progressive Alliance administration has at last granted planning consent following years of prevarication for the Woodyard at Holmesford near Watts Stanwell on the A6 as a permanent traveller site, subject to the usual due process of site investigations and, crucially, acquisition of the land, of course, which we are now proposing in clauses 4 and 5. But on top of that, I mean, I don't necessarily agree, by the way, with the need to have 6 weeks of online further consultation, because that was carried out when in the planning stage when it went to planning committee after consultation. So I don't think that necessarily has to be continued to further delay any development of that site, which is the only one that we've got on the table as a potential permanent site. It can't be a temporary site, actually, because the costs of making it safe and complying with all the planning conditions would make it, it wouldn't be viable. It would be wasting this council an awful lot of money. We wouldn't necessarily guarantee it as a permanent site. So it's got to be a permanent site, in my opinion. Yeah, yes, yes, I've said that's the good news, that we've got this site at the Woodyard. So I think it's obviously regrettable now that no acceptable new sites are being put forward by local authorities or landowners, which is why we're including clauses 6 and 7 in our recommendations tonight. I accept what Councillor Leeser said about going to estate agents. That might be something which could be done as well, but I suppose the movers of the motion decided that actually going to land agents and paying them a fee would be perhaps a bit quicker than going to all the estate agents in the area. However, and finally, I can say now and categorically that I will never personally support the approval of Ashbourne's Fishpond Meadow Overspill car park or the Clifton Road coach and car park also in Ashbourne. So I do urge members to support these revised proposals tonight and signal a degree of progress on this controversial matter and unity from this council.
Thank you, Councillor Burford. Councillor Hobson, please. Thank you.
I'm just a bit amazed that Councillor Burford could just say that without he's not seen all the evidence. He wasn't on the last working group. He's not on this one, and yet he's just making a decision on something. I agree with you because I've seen the emails and I know I've spoken to the Ashbourne members. But the fact is, this, you know, yes, it's your personal view, but that's the way you're going to vote. I want some reassurance. Roseley and Ashbourne, they were on those postponed recommendations. Those people, one of your councillors here, who may choose to speak tonight, took the time to go down to visit those businesses at Roseley, and she said they were traumatised, those people. You have to listen to these people. You have to listen to your businesses, your residents, and you should be listening to Dr. Spencer, who's telling you how to go forwards.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. We're clearly between a rock and a hard place. I mean, this isn't easy. And in a sense, we're probably not going to get very far if we bicker too much. I would hope that there's significant common ground in some of these proposals, because that's the only thing that's going to push forward the development of Holmesford, a potential site. I know people disagree with the use of that word. I think we need to look back and see why we are where we are. And the November 2022, and indeed the decision in 21, basically we saw a progression of sites being eliminated until in November last year there were 2. And in your introduction to that report, you said this report does not provide long-term solutions, but should be viewed as a stepping stone that moves the council forward in identifying potential temporary sites. I think we must all agree that it's currently a very small and precarious stepping stone, not least because, of course, at the end of January, or whenever it was in January, one site effectively fell out of being approved. And so we've got the incredible situation here where we've got 2 families to which we have a homeless responsibility on 2 sites. What on earth would the council do if a storm brought down some trees in Matlock Bath Station car park? The legality and the obstacles that would ensue are horrendous, and it would fall on our officers. We'd expect them to do something. We've given them nothing that they can do. This is a serious situation. I do think, for all its possible flaws, the work of this current working group has at least attempted to unlock the logjam and move it forward. And you've got to. This is a dire situation. I mean, the people who came and spoke, and I'd like to thank them for what they said, demonstrate such a diversity of opinion and views as to what the solution is. You can see why it's so complicated. You clearly cannot please everybody. However, it would be nice, would it not, if there were a set of criteria, as Councillor Hughes suggested, so that anybody could simply look at what the criteria were and say, well, that's not going to work, but that would. It would just allow everybody to see why you make the decisions you make. And I think that's a worthwhile objective. It's not going to be easy, but to be perfectly honest, using Local Plan HC6 Section A, and just say there's 3 sections, red, amber and green, on that, when it's a very complicated issue about nuisance to amenity and local residents. Hugely complex. To reduce that to a 3-point score with no criteria for that scoring is not acceptable. We need to be better than that. We can be better than that. We've got to find 2 least worst sites and have a reserve in case of a disaster, surely? So please support all you can of this. I think as it stands, and we've drawn things, we're less ambitious than perhaps we were. And I think we should be able to go forward and at least pursue progress in Holmesford, but be aware there's another problem coming down the track, potentially. Thank you.
Councillor Whitehead.
Thanks, Chair. Matlock Bath's had enough. I'm sure the families situated in Matlock Station car park have had enough of being dumped in a car park, unsuitable to live in. The rest of the community are significantly impacted, not just in terms of their interactions with the family in the car park and the mess and the kind of the excrement of the report I had this morning, but the noise, the constant whir of generators, leaf blowing till 11 o'clock at night, people shouting. And I understand there's kind of issues. I have an autistic son myself, but we live in a gorge. And that means that the sound that's made, whether it's from the traveller family or if it's anything else, like we've got some railway work at the moment, it just reverberates off the walls of the gorge and amplifies the noise. How this council ever thought that Matlock Bath was a suitable location, even for a temporary basis, is beyond me. So let's talk about some of the other impacts. The parish council and residents write to me on a weekly basis. I'm stopped in the street daily to talk about this issue. It's the most talked about issue in the village. We're a small village. The disproportionate impact that's been placed on our community because of decisions or the lack of decisions made by this council is completely unfair. And it's about time that the rest of the district started to take their fair share of this responsibility. And then we can have a look at the economic impacts. So this year, Matlock Bath has not been able to have any coach visitors. So I know it's referenced in the report, and there's a comment in the report to say that some provisions been made that people could go and park at Cromford. Well, that's not Matlock Bath. So those people who park in Cromford will go in will be in Cromford. They're not going to walk the 1.5 miles up to Matlock Bath. A lot of these coach parties are elderly people. They want to come to Matlock Bath. So Peter Baranek, the chair of the parish council, has been really helpful. He's provided me some information and data. And I think it's worth us just considering it for a moment. Because we think with the number of coaches that have not been able to park at Matlock Bath so far this summer, That's about 20,000 visitors that haven't come to our community, that haven't come into our businesses, that haven't served our economy. And even if we go on a really conservative sort of kind of viewpoint, that they only spent £5 each when they came into our community, that's £100,000 that we've lost. That's unacceptable, completely unacceptable. And even if we consider it just from a council perspective, coaches normally pay a minimum of £5.50 to park, so sometimes a lot more if they stay longer. Then normally we'll have kind of people using the toilets. There's 20,000 people not using the paid-for toilet at our disposal. So we're probably looking at a loss of around £10,000 just to the council in terms of what we could have taken in. It doesn't seem right that a small community like ours has been impacted so much. So I welcome the report. I do see it as a step forward, and we have to embrace it. But I really would like to see some hard, fast timescales so we can go back, and I can go back to my community and start telling them what our plan is. Because at the moment we don't have a plan, we just have a load of words on a piece of paper. And it's about time that we started living up to our responsibilities as a council, our legal responsibilities to these homeless families, but also to the residents that live and pay council tax in our community. So please, support this report, but I would like to see from the Alliance, from the working group, some hard, fast timescales so we can start to move at pace. And I know it's not easy, but there has to be some solutions that doesn't involve just dumping this poor family in Matlock Bath and us paying the consequences for the last 3 years, because it's basically been 3 years permanently. And the last thing I'll just say is just about the misinformation that maybe I've had, maybe from some officers, because I've queried this a number of times with officers, and the information I get back is that Matlock Bath has been designated as the place for this family to go. No one ever mentioned to me that that expired in January. So actually there's no legal footing for that family to be in this car park. So I think our officers need to have a think about solutions too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got 7 people more to speak in this debate, and I'm mindful that we're 25 minutes into the hour, so I'm not going to accept anybody else to debate. But all I'd say is, can you keep it brief? And I don't want to stifle debate, but can you keep it brief? Thank you. The next person I've got is Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to keep this brief. I'm a newcomer to this, really, in this authority, having come across the border from Staffordshire Moorlands. However, a lot of the furore seems to me to be caused by the what one of the speakers earlier, the representations earlier in our meeting, called the hokey-cokey approach. And I quite welcomed that, actually, because it was a lot of the furore has been created by the idea that these sites were now back in, and then all of a sudden they're out, but they're postponed rather than out. And that does concern me, because we don't want to create any more of that. And I think people have spoken very amply about that. Personally, I have none of these sites in my ward, but I did visit 2 of them, Rowsley and the Clifton site in Ashbourne. Both of them, I didn't speak to residents, I just went and viewed them. And I found that both of them were highly unsuitable. In fact, when I turned up at the Clifton site, the travellers were on the site, and a young man was walking around semi-naked and causing havoc with the local people who were trying to park on the site to go to either the pharmacy or the surgery and those kind of areas, really. And you know, it made me think, as a ward member, would I visit that site and just have a common sense view about, you know, what is real about this? And I thank you for your comments about Matlock Bath and other sites, that we all have a responsibility just to kind of look at those sites and to talk to our residents and to say, actually, of that list that was on but is now postponed, these should be permanently removed. And we shouldn't be wasting our time on those kinds of sites which clearly are unsuitable. So let's not bring them back, let's not postpone them, let's get rid of them. And people have consequently talked about, and I know it's in the recommendations to talk about Woodyard, Homesford and so on, that's really important going forward. But my other question, finally, Chair, and I don't want to pursue this any further, But in 5.4, it says there was consultation, and since that time, they, I assume that's the authority, have actively looked for potential plots of land that could be developed and have approached officers, the group, with their suggestions. At the time of drafting this report, officers are approaching the relevant landowners to establish whether there is any interest in potential negotiations. We've made no mention of possibilities there, where those sites are, who they are, and is that a relevant issue for discussion, or is it just left on the table kind of broad and open with some kind of non-committal? I don't know where that is. So I welcome this amended report. Thankfully, it is amended, and I will probably vote for the majority of it, including the excellent amendment. Thank you very much to the item. I think it was 3, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. Just to mention Matlock Bath, I recall a meeting where, questions were asked of us all to come up with sites in our wards and whatever, and there was only 2 individuals who made a suggestion. One was Matlock Bath. It was on a temporary basis that it would be finished in January. Sadly, we were naive, and there didn't seem to be a lot of work in trying to locate anywhere else for the travellers to go. The suggestion that Peter made earlier, that had been suggested, but you're right. The school was a situation, because that car park, the top tier's never used that much, but obviously we've got about the school. It's time to move on and grasp new opportunities. Recently at the planning meeting, we approved the woodyards. The planning application was supported by all but one on the planning committee. There were some passionate speakers that night, and I felt that it was the right thing for us to do. I seconded it, and Peter proposed it. So it wasn't political. It was judged on its merits. We went to the site, we asked our questions, and we thought it was a good site. And we didn't think there was anything on that site that couldn't be overcome to make it a permanent site. What I would ask of the officers is if we put the same effort into, pursuing this opportunity as you did with Hasker Farm, which turned out to be an utter disaster for us. The damage that has done to our reputation, and I'm a proud member of this council, but it was just incredible. And please, let's pursue this. There might be issues, there might be commercial issues, but I can't believe there's nothing that can't be overcome. It's the only site in Derbyshire Dales that is approved as a permanent site. I can't remember ever having one, have we? No, and to be honest, I was quite impressed with the planning, because it was a really great debate and all the issues were discussed and nobody had their arm forced up their back, and we just made a free vote and decided. So my plea to Councillor Flitter and the officers is to please make every effort to pursue the one and only site that is available and has planning permission for a permanent travel site in Derbyshire Dales. The travellers and the residents of Derbyshire Dales deserve better from this council.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think, unfortunately, we're still living with the consequences of the inability of many previous administrations to come forward with a solution to this problem, and I think that's the responsibility of all members. It's not a political statement. I think all members are equally guilty of not being able to address this issue. However, I think, as Councillor Burfoot and Councillor Murphy have said, there is some positivity now in this amended proposal, in that we are now progressing with a permanent site. I happen to be the member who voted against that at planning committee. But we took a decision, we gave it planning permission, so I am now fully behind moving ahead with that. So that is positive news. I agree. I personally don't see the need for a further 6 weeks of consultation when we've just undertaken 8 weeks of consultation on the planning application. However, that is perhaps something which the working group might like to consider. So I don't intend to take that any further. I don't really like the phrase least worst. We're not looking for the least worst site. We're searching for the best site. I think if you regard travellers as aliens, they'll behave like aliens. Then travellers are colleagues in our human family, so we need to respect them. They live differently, but a lot of us have lived differently at times in our lives, and we need to respect those differences. And I think if you treat people as fellow humans and treat them with tolerance, then you get respect back from that community. So I hope we'll continue to do that as a council, as I think we always have done. So I'm very pleased with recommendation 6. Now I know we've appointed agents before, and I understand what Councillor Lees is saying, but we have appointed agents before and we've not been successful. So it is really important that we appoint right agents who know what they're doing, and it's really important that the working group keeps on top of those agents and we get a report back just as soon as possible. And I think that is far more important that recommendation 6 moves forward as fast as possible, rather than us continuing to have arguments amongst ourselves about the infamous list of sites. Because we're not actually going to go back and revisit all those sites. We're going to go out and look for new best sites, and that's what we should focus on. So with those comments, Chair, I want to support the amendment.
Thank you very much. Councillor Flitter.
Right, Chair, well, I will make this short because we've talked a lot about the sites, the process and all that goes with it. This is a very emotive subject, regardless of what side you're on and whether you are a member of the travelling community or resident. But I have to pay tribute to Councillor Marilyn Franks, because she's a new member with expertise that's done her best and with the support to come to some way that we can possibly move forward. I would also like to say that I always supported Councillor Hobson in the way that she ran the last group. But the problem was, and this is where I'm concerned on my own, I'm concerned about any matrix or criteria. We had that in an orange, red, blue, whatever colour you wanted. And we insisted that we went to every site and saw every possibility. That system did not work. So I want a criteria that will work. And I'm afraid that's up to our officers to come up with that solution. It won't suit everybody. It's not a numbers game. We're dealing with people's lives. And I also want to thank Councillor Lees. I totally agree with what Councillor Lees is on about and support those views. And we must go down every avenue that we can to find a solution. We're not got to keep going back and back looking at fault. But, you know, I do have to bring up the Harrison Way site. That came up in discussion outside. And I personally felt at that time that we were misled on the information about that site. And others on that site visit agreed with me that it wasn't the site that it was professed to be. But nevertheless, and I think Councillor Hobson is aware that my views right from the start were that it should be the district of Derbyshire Dales sharing this responsibility and not on one particular place. I also totally agree with Councillor Whitehead. Matlock Bath has had enough. We've got to solve that problem, and the only way we can do that is being grown up and act accordingly. And I hope that every single member in this council chamber tonight supports this motion so we can move together to find a solution that's been avoided and we've not been able to find for the last 20 years. So let's go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor G.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, it's a good debate, this is. I did actually wake up with Roman numerals in my head, and I thought I was in Florence looking at the Uffizi, but it was actually 27 prospective traveller sites that were excluded last November. I think there seems to be a will on this council not to go back to these 27 sites. Do we need to give the public some surety on that, because so they have confidence we're not going to bring these 27 sites up again, so they're excluded? The fact that they were in the papers, they've been taken out, which I was really happy about, but we need the public, you can take away from this meeting tonight, so people in all these areas will know that these 27 sites that are listed on the previous papers that have been taken out of this one are not going to be open for consideration, because the council has already dictated that in its decision of last November.
Thank you, Councillor G. Councillor Inswaite.
I need my glasses. First of all, I'd like to add my thanks to Councillor Franks and the Travellers Working Group. They volunteered for this. It's a really thankless task, and it is, I've described it as a Gordian knot, and it truly is. And I know it's been a very stressful and difficult time for them, so I appreciate the time that they've spent on it. Everyone in this room knows that we are unlikely to find a community anywhere in the Dales which will welcome the site with open arms, and yet everyone agrees that we have a duty to provide them. A clear, public list of criteria for selecting and assessing potential sites is a vital part of letting the light in on what has been a remarkably opaque process. By doing this, we can begin to reassure our communities that we are fully aware of their concerns and that we will do everything in our power to bring them along with us. I have spoken to people in Roseley and Matlock Bath and Ashbourne, and many of the issues that they are concerned about arise from the fact that the traveller families that we have a duty of care to are not in the right places and are not therefore able to get the right care that they deserve and they need. We have a lot to do to rebuild our reputation and the trust of our communities, and we must do our utmost to resolve this problem fairly. We also have to continue to work in dialogue with the representatives of the travellers community and those families currently and very directly affected by the lack of sites. Whether you're a member of the travelling community or the settled community, we all know that some neighbours are easier to live with than others. With this in mind, I fully support the drawing up of a tenancy agreement to outline the standards of behaviour and service and clear consequences if this isn't adhered to. I understand that no solution is perfect, but it's time for us to move forward and find some options.
Thank you. Councillor Wakeman.
Yes, Chair, through you. I'm a bit disappointed tonight, really, very disappointed in some of the words that have been said. These are two families, you know, some have called them gypsies, some have called them travellers. They're two families. We've got to have a bit of respect for them. There'll be some viewers on there now watching this. They've heard some of the comments of what's been said from both sides, of what they've been doing, and that'll make people more angry. It's not right. The two families got a bit of respect for them. And I think in future, if we're going to talk like we've been doing tonight, let's do it behind closed doors without the camera. Because I think it's disgusting.
Thank you. Councillor Franks, I'm coming back to you. You've got a right to reply. You moved the motion, so you've got a right to reply.
Mr. Chair, can I ask if we can have clarity on recommendation 8 and amend it from licence to tenancy agreement? So, that's Councillor Lidway's just mentioned that.
I'm very happy for tenancy agreement to be put in. Tenancy agreement is actually the term I've always known.
Yeah.
That applies
So-
to travellers.
So you're happy to do that? And
Yeah.
Councillor Slack, are you happy? Yeah. So can you do your... Just going to go to Councillor East. What is it, Councillor?
Can we just have clarity of whether this is postponed or permanent withdrawal of these sites, please? That was put on the list, the 20-odd sites. 27 sites. Because I think we owe it to our residents for them to know whether it's postponed or withdrawn.
Right. That's the last question, but just clarify that, Councillor
I
Franks. Thank you.
think, to be pragmatic, we've got one family who is on a site which probably we've heard about Matlock Bath, we've heard about the residents, we've heard about whether or not, a lot of debate about whether or not Matlock Bath is suitable or not. I think we need to, I can only say postpone. I can't agree with, we need more sites, but we need more temporary sites until we can move them onto permanent sites.
Thank you. Do you want to just sum up then, and then we'll move on to the vote? Thank you.
Well, basically, I would like to propose, along with the amendment to recommendation 2, that I'd like to put this for the vote. I'd like the motion to be considered by full council and put to the vote.
Thank you. So the amended version has been put forward. Councillor Hughes put an amendment in, so we're now voting on the amendment with the addition or the replacement of number 2. You've all seen the copy of that one that you've seen. So all those in favour of accepting all 8 recommendations with the amendment, all those in favour, please. Yeah, is there anybody that's against? There shouldn't be, because we had 31. So that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We move on now to 11, which is the resilience, resources and priorities. And this is a report brought to us by our CEO, Paul Wilson. Mr. Wilson, can you please give us the report? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Given the time of evening, I'm going to keep this introduction very brief. However, that doesn't in any way undermine the significance of this report and the content of the issues which I'm bringing to members' attention. Members during the last few years have received various reports from me regarding organisational resilience and resources, and this report covers a number of key areas for the Council in terms of organisational capacity, profile of the workforce, issues regarding recruitment and retention, pay and recognition, training development, graduates and apprentices and other employee benefits packages. I'm not going to go through all of the detail of that because I do trust that members have read it, but to give a very quick summary, this organisation is facing very significant challenges over the next 5 years or so. The information provided at section 3 regarding the workforce profile indicates that within that period of time there will be a significant turnover of staff and mainly senior staff as well within that, and unless the organisation seeks to address that now, there could be significant challenges in the future in terms of the ability of this organisation to deliver the services that our residents rightly expect. So within the report, I've sought to identify a whole series of issues regarding how we may, as an organisation, better prepare ourselves for that challenge which lies ahead over the next 5 years. And in particular, focus on the issues at section 10 of the report, whereby I outline a number of potential new recruitment and retention initiatives which Council may wish to consider. The report does not in any way intend to provide all of the answers. It's merely at the start of a discussion. And I think the discussion will need to continue in the coming weeks and months as we start to address some of these issues moving forward. But out there at section 10, you do have a number of options, and it would be beneficial, I think, in order to move the discussion forward, if members were in a position to indicate which, if any of those options, you weren't prepared to consider or support. Because if that leaves a number of options on the table for consideration, officers can then go away, do further work, which wouldn't be wasted work, and then come back to you at the appropriate opportunities to consider those. So I will say no more in terms of that particular issue. If I can move on, Chair, to section 12 of the report, there are a number of other employee-related issues which are very current at the present time, and I do require decisions from members on these issues. So the first is to notify of the retirement of the licensing manager. That is a key post within the organisation. It's a post which I envisage could be quite challenging to recruit to, and I'm therefore seeking council agreement for a degree of overlap between the current post holder retiring, in anticipation that if we can recruit, we can bring somebody in to work alongside the post holder to make sure there is a very smooth transition on what is a very important service. The second area is Ashbourne Reborn governance issues. As members are aware, the District Council is the accountable body for the Ashbourne Reborn programme. Communications is absolutely critical. We had a very good meeting of the programme board earlier this week, and the programme board endorsed an approach to bring in additional communications resource to support the Council's activity over the next 2 years, and there are recommendations in the report for you to consider in that respect. The third area at paragraph 12.10 is data protection and information governance. This follows an audit completed in March of this year, which identified a number of areas where the Council needs to address issues within its current policies in order to improve resilience. And in the interests of expediency, we are seeking a resource to bring in some consultancy support to plug those particular gaps. Clearly, that's very important in light of some very high-profile issues regarding data protection and the like, which have been in the national media in the last few weeks and months. The next area is out of hours standby duty roster at para 12.14. This is an issue which came out of the Clean and Green review. This isn't to indicate that the Council will be in a position to provide 24/7 services, but there are occasions when our Clean and Green workforce in particular are required to attend out of hours to deal with emergency scenarios. And clearly we need to make sure that staff are properly rostered such that they can respond to those issues as and when they arise. Moving on, there's an issue regarding asset evaluations. This is a requirement from the financial accounting procedures that the Council has to go through. And due to the change in arrangements regarding those regulations, there is a very significant burden now falling on the Council, which we are currently unable to address without it significantly impacting on other priority areas. And therefore I am seeking Council agreement for an additional resource to be built in order that we can address that without it impacting on other Council priorities. So, Chair, that is a very quick run through of what is a very important and in-depth report, but given the time of the evening, I'm happy to leave it there for now.
I think it was quite possibly always going to be so, to be perfectly honest. It's always going to be that late. But questions? Any questions? Well, are you going to ask a question?
I'm going to ask you a question.
You're going to ask me a question?
Chair, can I have permission to move the motion now? Because I want to move I want to move the recommendations, but I want to propose a task and finish group set up by the leadership that would be agreed between in the leadership of the four parties to review the options that Mr. Wilson has put forward in his recommendations. So, but I'm not I'm just saying this is what I will do if you give me permission to do it.
I'm more than happy for you to do that, as long as there are no questions for Mr. Wilson in relation to this paper.
Thank you.
Right. So the questions have been done. We'll move to debate. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there could be questions afterwards. So I'd like to move the recommendations 1 to 9 in the first and second pages of the report in full. Approval will set in train important actions that will deliver a number of things. But first of all, I'd like to just mention the very useful and insightful workshop that we had earlier on this week, I think, which gave so much insight into the issues facing the senior management team, the CLT, and the senior managers in this organisation, and the working culture in the organisation, which perhaps needs to be addressed in order to achieve the results that Mr. Wilson and I think we all want to achieve, which is a very effective organisation. And without going into what was said in that meeting, I think the two principal issues that arose was first of all that too many operational decisions were being pushed up to the CLT and not being operated on at a more junior level in the organisation, and the other one that arose from that was then there was a cultural issue of doing that. So I think there needs to be some work done on the culture of the organisation and also on the way it operates, and I think the proposals that I'll put in this paper will help in achieving that. So the things that the first three recommendations I think will achieve are, first of all, a means of balancing workload between council officers and introducing a new working culture that should improve the effectiveness of the administration by increasing its capacity. Improvements in the recruitment and retention of staff, and we know that there's a big problem with recruitment and retention at the moment in many of the areas that the council works. So I think we all recognise that, and there is a proposal to change a moribund fund into one that can be used for recruitment and retention. So a recruitment and retention reserve, which I believe has a five-figure amount in it at the moment, that could be used to provide a means of providing staff with further rewards if necessary. In this respect, I would like to propose that we take, instead of evaluating the options in this meeting, which I don't think we can do, we set up a task and finish group to take those, to look at the options, evaluate them, and then brief us at the next full council meeting, and that task and finish group is set up by the leadership team, the council leadership team. The third point then is to provide a supplementary revenue budget to enable a new recruited licensing manager, and that will effectively provide a smooth transition between Eileen Tierney leaving and the new manager arriving. I would like to thank Eileen for her 36 years of service, I believe, and I'm not sure I'm the right person to do that, because the only place that I've met Eileen is at the cricket club and not in the council, so I've had no responsibility for licensing at all. But be that as it may, I'd like to thank her for the service that she's provided, and look forward to her having a very happy and long retirement when she does. The report also discusses two items concerning Ashbourne Reborn, and as the chair of the program board, this is important to me personally. While external communications was considered at the bid stage for Ashbourne Reborn, the amount set aside for this had to be minimal due to the terms of the bid, so that we weren't able to put in as much money as we would like for communications, external communications, because of the rules that we were following in bidding for the job. The programme board felt that the amount set aside is inadequate given the comprehensive nature of the changes to the public realm in Ashbourne, and it also considered that there was a reputational risk to the council and to the county council and other parties as well if communications was not managed effectively. Therefore, it proposed that an additional communications staff member dedicated to the Ashbourne Reborn programme on a 2-year fixed contract was provided, but this had to be funded from one of the councils, and as the as the funding council in this respect and responsible for funding, it would come through the district council. In addition, of course, it takes time to recruit somebody to do that, so there was a need for a short-term programme board, short-term communications interim to take on the role in the short term, and that would be provided by ACOM, who are already doing that up until now. Turning back to the internal work of the council for the final recommendations, 3 additional requirements have been identified: the need for external support for complying with data protection, and the need for out-of-hours cover, and the appointment of an external value. And I think Mr. Wilson has mentioned all of these and described the reason why we need these. While this set of recommendations is a mix of several strategic actions and actions necessary to satisfy immediate requirements, they represent actions necessary to administer this council and for the effective delivery of Ashbourne Reborn. Therefore, I would like you to move that all recommendations are approved, with the addition that a task and finish work group is set up to evaluate options under recommendation 2 and reports back to the council in the next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Flitter who had his hand up a minute ago, but your 9:30 has arrived, and well, I was just about to ask, is anybody? All I'd say is, yet again, we've got Karen sat here, and she sat through a whole meeting again. And what I would like to raise is, next time we have a meeting with finance, can we get her on first, please? Yeah, because it isn't really fair her to sit there, and she's been very patient. I've been reading everything over her shoulder. But so, can I have a recommendation? Shall we say? We'll say, so we'll go to 10 o'clock. Councillor Hughes, you will move it, will you? And anybody to second it, please? Councillor Wilton will second it. All those in favour, please. Thank you. Any against? Best of luck on that one. Nobody against. So we'll. So it's been moved, and Councillor Flitter. Right, Councillor Dobbs then. Okay, Councillor.
Can I just clarify with Councillor Hughes that this task and finish group is presumably working with Mr. Wilson, not? Yes. Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So you're happy to second that?
I'm happy to second that.
So it's been moved and it's been seconded. So can I just clarify that 2 would now be that a task and finish group be established to consider the options to enhance? Is that what it is? Oh, that's on recommendation 2. Councillor Flitter.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd hope that in the next few days we can come up with a date for the Leaders Advisory Group. And I think that's important because we've got the budget issues coming up at any time, which I would like the views on all members to put into that. We've got the traveller issue that we've been discussing tonight, and to make a united way forward would be helpful with all views from that meeting. And also on this meeting we could include this item so that we can then look at the members and expertise to go ahead and work as a task and finish group with the officers to come up with some firm recommendations and a new way forward. So I'm advocating that the Leaders Advisory Group be reconstituted within the next couple of weeks and the leadership sit down from all sides and discuss this in detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anybody else who wishes to speak in debate? No. Oh, Councillor Slack.
Just a quick one, really. I'd like to thank Paul Wilson for all his work on this report, and also earlier in the week, Circle and Squares was a fantastic lecture. Really, it really opened my eyes. Alan did on earlier this week with all the new proposals to improve the council, and I think anyone who was at that lecture would, have the same opinion, I'm sure. So thank you, Paul and Alan, for Circle and Squares.
Chair, can we move to a vote, please, on this?
Right. Yeah. Before you do, Councillor O'Brien, you did just have your hand up, so it's only fair we listen to what Councillor O'Brien said.
Yeah, could I just have some clarity from Councillor Hughes? A task and finish group, fine. I've heard reference, though, to the leadership group, the leaders and the leaders advisory group, and a task and finish group. Now, can we just be precise? What do we mean by a task and finish group, and who is intended to be comprised of?
Chair, the purpose of the leadership group would agree between themselves who was on the task and finish group. The task and finish group objective would be to review the options that Mr. Wilson put forward in his report, and identify criteria for evaluating those options, seek further information about the options, and then discuss them amongst themselves and analyse them and provide a recommendation back to this council, this next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Before Councillor Hobson asks the question, then, is that the leadership group or the leaders advisory group?
Yeah, we're happy with that. So we've got no other questions or no other debate. So it's been moved, it's been seconded. So we're having the 9 recommendations on agenda item 11, with the amendment slightly that a task and finish group be established to consider the options on number 2. All those in favour, please. Any against? Any abstentions? That's carried unanimously. Right, we'll move on to item 12, which is the monitoring officer and electoral registration officer. And basically, the report seeks to confirm the appointment of the Alan Mitchell and also the Chief Executive Officer as the electoral registration officer. Mr. Wilson, would you like to present the report, please?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair.
Nothing to add? Any questions in relation to this report? No?
Chair, if there are no questions, I'd like to so move this report.
That's
and
great.
The recommendation found on page 80.
That's any seconded, Councillor Wilton. So it's been moved and it's been seconded. We'll now move. You've got your hands up quick. We'll now move to the vote. Yeah. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That's carried unanimously. Right. It's Karen's turn. So, agenda item 13, proposed amendments to the Constitution financial regulations. This is to recommend the adoption of the revised financial regulations. Karen, do you want to present your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief. So we're asking the Council to approve the revised financial regulations, which are shown in Appendix 1. The key changes are set out in paragraph 2.3 of the report, and they're mostly to provide clarity, reflect changes in procedures, and to update some of the amounts from £25,000 to £30,000 following increases in inflation, and to align them to contract standing orders. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Karen? None.
Can I move to propose it, please?
Councillor Wilton's proposed and Councillor Wakeman has seconded it. Any questions at all or debate? No?
I'd just like to say thank you to Karen for a wonderful, riveting report. After I read this in detail, I had a wonderful night's sleep.
Thank you. So it's been moved. Did we have a seconder? Yes. Councillor Whitman, sorry, yes. So it's been moved, it's been seconded, and now move to the vote. All those in favour of receiving Karen's wonderful report? Any against? Any abstentions? That's carried unanimously. We now move on to agenda item 14. This is Karen again. It's the revenue budget monitoring quarter for the first quarter of this year. Karen, could you present your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The financial services team have been trying to make improvements to budget monitoring, especially following the outturn last year where we had a large underspend, which had been mostly unforeseen. So we have been strengthening budget monitoring requirements and procedures, and this is the first of the sort of new style report, if you like, that we're presenting to Council. So rather than just focus on reporting historic information, we're trying to turn our attention to forecasting the position to the year end. So this report not only shows what's happened in the first quarter, but then forecasts that. Obviously, it's based on judgments and assumptions to show what might happen by the end of the year. As you can see, we're forecasting a surplus by the end of the year of £740,000, and recommendation 3 and paragraph 111 of the report effectively suggests that we put £15,000 of that into the elections reserve and everything else into the general reserve. And the reason for that is that we're still developing the corporate plan and prioritising what we might want to do over the coming 4 years. So if we put it in the general reserve for now, later on in that process we can put it to specific reserves or use it for projects within the 2024-25 revenue budget or indeed in the capital programme. So that's a summary of the report. Details of reserves are shown as well on the final page on Appendix 4. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Karen, and thank you for being patient with us. Any questions for Karen? Councillor Shelley?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a similar question to the one I asked in the Governance and Resources Committee the other day, actually. It looks on face of it as good news, this. But I'm aware, obviously, that at the same time as we're getting benefits of interest, the organisation as a whole is suffering from inflationary costs. And I just wondered if we are able to put any sense on, it's a moving target, obviously, but any sense on what the overall impact of that is likely to be. So weighing that positive side against that negative by the end of this financial year. That's one question.
Yes, so the main reason for the underspend is that we've received a lot more investment interest, or we're due to receive a lot more by the end of the year, over £600,000 more than we expected. And that's because interest rates have increased from when we set the budget, and they've stayed at the higher level, and they're even going up more as we speak. So that's been a benefit. As you say, we have been impacted by inflation, but we did include high levels of inflation in our budget, with me being pessimistic. I forecast lower income than we're getting, and well, inflation's now 6.7%, and for some things we did put 10% in our budget. So from that point of view, we're not seeing any pressures from arising from inflation now at the moment, although, of course, we are keeping it under review.
Thank you. And just following up on that then, again, this may be just me not necessarily understanding, but the very last page of the report has forecasts for the reserves for the next 2 financial years. At the moment, I think we quite often use this figure of 25 million that the council is sitting on. It's a convenient figure, but it looks to me like that's heading in the direction of 13 million and 12 million over the course of the next 2 financial years. If that's correct, I'm just sort of seeking a correction on that. that's something which is perhaps more of a sobering thought when we come to talk about some of the expansionary aims that some of the members here have referred to in other subcommittees. So it's just I'm not, where there's a good need to spend, I understand that, but I'm just flagging that up perhaps on your behalf here. Karen, if I've got that right?
Yes, you're right in your interpretation of the appendix. We are planning to use reserves, but you need to bear in mind that a lot of the reserves were set up for specific purposes. A lot of them are used to support the capital programme, and those members who have been here a while will know that every time the capital programme comes up, I say, we're using up the reserves to fund that programme, and there will come a time when with nothing left in reserves. The larger reserves, you can see there's £9.3 million for revenue grants unapplied. That's where we've received the mostly Section 106 contributions. So we've put those to one side. We've received those in the past, but they will be obviously spent used to support the capital programme. So that's the largest reduction.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I regularly report what goes on in the council to residents in my ward because they take an interest in it. Now, Karen, when I tell them that we're making £70,000 extra on the garden waste collection than was anticipated, and we're going to put it in reserves, they're going to ask me, well, why can't we have that money back? How do you suggest I answer that question?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the charge for garden waste is set and approved by members. But the reason that we've received that much more than we expected is that we've got more residents than we anticipated actually signing up for the service. So hopefully that indicates that they're satisfied with the service. And I would reiterate that it's £50, which is about £1 a week. And that's in line from what I hear with what we were told when we set that fee, which was back in 2018. We were told that was comparable with most of the local authorities.
Thank you. Councillor Wilton.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the report, Karen. I did read it all the way to the end because I am that sad. It was just a quick one. Just obviously, as you say, it's a moving feast, this, and you're obviously doing the rolling forecast. Can we just check how periodically you're doing that, just to see, is it quarterly, just to reflect back to the members?
The plan is to report quarterly. It might not always come to council. It might go to Governance and Resources Committee. But as you can see in this report, we're seeking approval for some supplementary revenue budgets. For some environments which are above my threshold that I can authorise, so only council can approve those. So where those are required or where supplementary revenue budgets are required, we'll have to come to council. Otherwise, we might report just to Governance and Resources instead.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, would anybody like to move the report? Councillor Ripton?
One more question.
Yes, you can ask a question.
Just to build on Councillor O'Brien's point, the investment income is a result of high interest rates, but obviously the equal and opposite of that is that people are paying higher costs for credit and other services. So the question is, and you may not have to answer it tonight, but the question is, are there any services that we could or should have been providing to some of our most vulnerable residents that weren't or aren't being provided, that we may now want to think about using that money to provide, given the current economic circumstances?
Well, we have been providing services to our residents. We continue to provide council tax support. Rob and his colleagues in housing have provided and delivered several schemes, such as the Household Support Fund. But certainly I can take that to the corporate leadership team and we can look at it again.
So if there are no more questions, Councillor Wilton.
Could I propose, please?
Yeah, you can move the motion. Does it seconded, Councillor Peacock? So it's been moved and it's been seconded. Can we move to the vote? All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? I found the motion carried unanimously. And thank you very much. I'd just like to apologise for my brain fog on Councillor G's motion. So I apologise for that, and maybe next time we can get by better. Thank you very much, and thank you for your perseverance. Thank you. Bye-bye.